Is it on? Does this thing work?
It says live.
Welcome to BS Session 113, everybody. The Mouths of Alberta are here to give us all the skinny on the 2025 PRS and NRL. Do you object? I don't think so.
No.
All the PRS and NRL matches, etc., around Western Canada and more.
This right here has the ability with a 30 caliber clip to disperse with 30 bullets within half a second.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.
You're listening to your weekly dose of BS, Ballistically Speaking. The Ballistically Speaking Podcast.
How are you guys doing tonight?
I can't complain.
What strain did you have today?
You can message anybody on this team and be like, hey, what are you doing Friday night? And all of us are like, nothing. Let's do a podcast.
Yeah. That's
We're all old.
Middle-aged shooters.
Ain't nobody here but us chickens. We got 2 on the disabled list, 1 on birthday duty, and then just you guys and me.
So do they
That'd
get
be
wheelchair stickers now?
Wheelchair stickers, yeah.
Just
Little parking passes.
Looking out for people.
Not that kind of disabled. It's more of a pair of mental breakdowns, really.
Fair enough.
At least that's the way it was conveyed to me. Well, you know what? We'll get into things right away. I'll take care of the sponsors and stuff, I suppose. Get that out of the way, and then Shaden can take over entirely.
And just talk.
All right, as always, folks, we're brought to you by EM Precision Rifles in Leduc, Alberta, building Canada's finest precision rifles. Find Shane and Steve on Facebook, Instagram, and on their website at emprifles.ca. Bolt Action Coffee, bringing specialty coffee to the precision shooting world. Order coffee and merchandise at boltactioncoffee.com. Call sign 66, Canada's best rifle training. Welcome to the Brotherhood. Book a course now at callsign66.ca and follow them on Instagram at callsign66, 6 is spelled out, and on Facebook at C/S66. Odell Engineering, pick up a Canuck shotgun or Bergera rifle from your local distributor and tell them Phil sent you. Look them up on Instagram, Flakebook, and their website at odellengineeringlimited.com. That's LTD.com, not limited, spelled out. Check out the new Canuck Wrangler in 357 mag. Mike says the tactical one. I'd like to see that 44 mag and, just for fun, a 4570 in that little light gun.
Yep.
That'll let you know you're alive. Apex Optics. When you buy Apex, precision comes standard. Check out all the fine competition rifle scopes, red dots, and binoculars at apexoptics.co. Ribstone Gunsmithing, craftsmanship done right. Contact Oscar at ribstonegunsmithing.ca and breathe life back into any firearm. And finally, this is an old set of notes here. We're missing one. What the hell is it? Sterling Arms.
Oh, I guess
you know what? You know what? Google Sterling Arms.
Yeah.
Sorry, JR. I effed up. All right, and finally, Mark Scopes Canada. The Dion Optical Design line of rifle scopes has a scope for all your hunting and shooting needs. Find Doug and Niza at markscopes.ca. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good.
Oh yeah, it's
good. It's good.
Yeah.
What have you been busy at other than
he's good.
I am drinking
Permagrin.
Johnny's Black out of a vase because I picked it out of the cabinet one time by accident. Alex bought me a bottle for Christmas, and my wife now pours it in my vase all the time.
Excellent.
I don't get normal
Seems I've
cups
seen
anymore.
that vase before. Yeah.
Yes, there.
Used to have a candle in it.
Yep.
Zach Schwingerschlegel says, I'm telling JR, well, you know what? It won't be the first time I've taken 40 licks. No, nothing. Nothing.
I got it.
God,
You said we weren't
you
allowed to say
guys-
anything in the first minute or we get banned, demonetized.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes. No fucking
You expect
swearing
me
in the first
you
5 minutes.
just did it.
You're quick.
I
We
heard
thought I
trucking.
was going to be the
All
weak
I
link.
heard trucking. I'm just
Trucking.
imagining that
No.
my 5-year-old is sitting next to me, and that's keeping me in check right now.
That doesn't help me at all.
I know it doesn't help you, but I've been really working
hell.
on it.
Yeah, ruined my child. Straighten up for yours.
He was already ruined.
Eh,
Hey,
not wrong.
you needed a practice run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And you
the
know what?
firstborn is.
Rumor has it that it's not your child anyway, so it's
Doesn't even look like me.
no.
Shane's like, when did I
Does-
get fixed again? No.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Crap. So
Yeah.
Is she
2025.
already listening or she missed that?
yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I don't see any comments or anything. I'll be waiting though.
Oh,
Anyways,
perfect.
let's change the topic so she can't see it.
Yeah.
You're right.
2025.
So holy match
Let's,
schedule, Batman.
No kidding. I've been kind of watching you guys. Haven't been participating a hell of a lot in the group chat there, but seems like there's a lot on the go.
Well, like this year, again, obviously there's been a lot of changes with CAPRA and PRS sanctioning coming to Canada, some good and some stressful. But what I'm seeing is even with a couple of the big match directors who shut down there last year, oh, definitely mine.
All
course,
right,
do that all
ruin
on-
the fun, Carrie.
Yeah. But even with like Colton shutting down his and Saprol selling out to over to Tyler, not out, but over to Tyler. I think we're seeing more matches. Like it's getting to be the point where you're having to pick and choose which ones you can fit in your schedule. And there's been a big push for guys to start shooting a couple of matches in the States. So we started looking at the travel times, and
Mhm.
there's a couple of US matches that are not bad, right? I mean, getting out of Calgary, they're 12 to 15 hours. I mean, that's all sort of manageable. It's the same sort of distance out to the Winnipeg matches. But even with that, we got 2 more matches out in Winnipeg too. So there's a plethora of 2-day matches to shoot this year.
That's amazing. And am I kind of being like poopy Johnny thinking what it's kind of shit timing, really, isn't it? We've been squawking for years about more matches, right? We want to see more matches. We're eager.
Mhm.
Want to get out there. Now, April 1st, we have more carbon tax coming, and I don't know if it's hit you guys out there yet, but in Saskatchewan here, I just got back home from a shift up north, and the fucking price of gas increased 10 cents while I was gone. It's at $1.59 now a
Yep.
liter,
So
and then
everything's
the
getting
tariffs
expensive.
and all this horseshit getting expensive. It's
$100 in
it's
toilet.
beyond expensive now. So
Yeah.
I hate
Well,
being
and-
Donnie Downer,
But that's why I say it's about picking and choosing. Not everybody. Like I'm
Yeah.
fortunate. I put some time and effort into the company, so the company pays my way. But not
Mhm.
everybody has that option, right? And when you start
No,
budgeting,
that's
like
right.
the way we figured it is a 2-day match on average is about $1,500 a head. We share those costs a little bit when like me and Carrie get to shoot together and things like that. But between your registration fees are $250 to $300, your ammunition now, I mean, even hand loading, what's your average like? What,
40 a
buck
round?
50 a round? Yeah, like a
Yeah.
200 round match is now $300, right? You got food,
Those
you got some
Barnes burners are
accommodations and
looking more
fuel.
attractive all the time, aren't they?
Right. So, I mean, guys have to be serious about when they go to a match, but I think it also leaves a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility for the match directors to make sure they're putting good events together. But again, I look at this year, if I would have got my Form 6 filled out, I'm in the middle of building another rifle, so I haven't got it done yet. I could be shooting NRL or PRS April 25th. That weekend, there's one of each match within 12 hours, 14 hours. Short action customs, PRS match, and then the Snake River Outdoorsman NRL match. And me and Mike have really gravitated towards NRL. So trying to sneak in a few more of those matches because we have 2 Canadian ones now, but there's like 4 or 5 more that we can sneak into like 12 to 13 hours away. It's
Sure.
it's really gotten to the point where you have to kind of pick and
That's
choose.
awesome.
Yeah, well, June, I
yeah.
could be shooting every single weekend in June, except I don't think Carrie would allow me.
Well, and
Is that right? Hey.
then
Yeah.
you start to get to that. You are jumping down to the States to do more matches. And like we just said, our dollars in the toilet, there's this, that. So now you're not looking at a $1,500 to weekend. You're looking at a
2,000, 2,200. Yeah, very quickly.
Like I was down in Colorado for Worlds. If you ever can shoot a cameo, like the guys talked it up, it's phenomenal. It's like shooting in the Grand Canyon. It was wicked. And we were down there for 10 days.
I saw some
and
pictures. It's
10 days. And I think that was at least a $5,000 trip.
Yep.
Oh my God.
And so it's like
quickly becoming a sort of an elitist game, isn't it?
It's a pay to play sport. We know that. But what it, and that one was a little bit different because it was Worlds. So it wasn't just your driving down on a Thursday night or getting there on a Friday, shooting your double and then getting the heck out of there. It was, we were there for, a day to drive down, a day to drive back. And we were there for 8 days and Airbnbs.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like I'll equate it to back when I was playing ball. You could there was all sorts of club tournaments and stuff like that, or club level tournaments and stuff like that around. But if you wanted to compete at Western Canadians or go to nationals or worlds, that was an entirely different story. Like back in the day, I'm really dating myself, but sponsorship is one thing. For now, it's a bit of a different story than individual shooters and that, but a team had to have sponsorship. And back in the day, we worked bingos, if you can imagine, back when there was smoking allowed in the halls, and that was horrible. I'm sure that took like at least a dozen years off my damn life, but but it's almost getting to be that way with shooting.
Except that nobody can sponsor properly, right? There's no in the Canadian market space. Even guys like Mike's a supported shooter with EM Precision, right? Like there's only so much we can give back. Nobody makes enough of a living in this country that you're paying shooters. It's not like the States where there's actual revenue, and even they are very limited because there's not active TV or advertising or marketing. You're really just like remarketing into your own community that already has some level of awareness, right? It gets difficult because the idea of a shooting sport isn't supported, even in the States, by the mainstream, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
you know what? I'm going to take just a moment for a bit of a tangent. I had the opportunity to talk to just a moment.
Just a moment.
Imagine that. Chris isn't even here, and I'm doing this.
I was going to say I'm complimenting.
I had the opportunity to run into Rod Formosa. He's over in shit, I
Italy.
can't remember the name of that island, but off the coast of Sicily. And he runs help me out here. It's Italia Long Shot. Is that what it is?
Something like that, because Steve and Homie have been talking about trying to make it out to Italy to go to that shoot. It goes out to 2,000 yards. I think it's 338 caliber and under.
Yes, I think that's what it is. They run I think they run, or he runs like a sanctioned kind of 1 mile, and then he does his own Italia long shot. I was just what a bonehead. I was just texting with him over Facebook Messenger the other day, and we're going to get him on the podcast. But he was telling me at SHOT Show, ran into him at the Apex booth. And we'd communicated before. I wrote a short article for him for that website magazine that he has about the March Genesis. This was a year and a half ago, something like that. Anyway, so we kind of knew each other already, and he was telling me about all the work that he does, and the entire thing is televised. There's over 200 shooters at these competitions, and it's like I think unfairly sort of compared it to golf, where there's some real interest there, enough to televise the damn thing. And I asked him about spectators, and he's like, oh yeah, there's like, I can't remember the number he spit out, but it was an incredibly surprising number of spectators at these damn events. So we're going to get him on the show and get him to talk about all this. And now I don't know how much appetite there would be, at least in Canada, for something like that, because that takes an incredible amount of organization. And he was telling me all the people on the payroll, let's say, for lack of a better way to put it, to televise, and he's got commentators in different countries, and they're they're dialing in from other places commentating on this stuff, and it's just a massive production.
Oh yeah.
So there's room there for big name sponsorship and all that kind of stuff because
Yeah.
you get that coverage.
Well,
Well, and
Whereas we're just kind of low level here, and we're happy to go shoot. I think is really all we sort of need.
Well, and what's more interesting, because we did look at the costs of it. So obviously going to Italy, it's what, 18, 19-hour flight time, things like that. So looked at it, and of course, I don't think there's any way Steve or I could go to that and not take our wives with us. It's Italy. So we looked at doing like a 10-day, going to shoot the event, take another 10 days, airfare, Airbnb, rented vehicle, all that stuff. And I'm not even shitting you. It was cheaper to do that than it was for us to fly down to Raton, New Mexico to go shoot the King of 2 Miles.
Is that something? Oh,
And that's for like a
God.
4-day or 5-day turnaround at Raton, right? Like
Right.
that's where it gets hard for the sport to grow when it becomes so expensive to be able to participate in any of the meaningful events. Because let's be honest, ELR in Canada is pretty limited. Valcartier has been running matches for several years now. They've got, I think, 2 a year that they run, and then obviously Furlong with the King of 2 Miles. But there's lots of guys who've been doing it for a long time, but there's no place to go out and truly test yourself against the other guys who do it. Going hitting a pipeline right away and shooting by yourself is awesome. But I think everybody who's done that and shows up at the King of 2 Miles gets a rude awakening to how easy we can go on ourselves when we're shooting by ourselves versus you have 3 scoring rounds to hit. Here's your time limit, and there's no flags. It's, I mean, all of us have gone and hit targets at like very far away, but you hit competition, and every single time Mike and I do it. I mean, Mike was last year and he had to go shoot rimfire or something gay, but every single time I've come out with another really valuable procedural lesson and another I guess level of accountability to what did I screw up to end up to where I was at, what did we do well, and you know what, it's what's the King of 2 Miles, that's a 2-mile competition held down in Hannah, Alberta. Well, it's actually global now. It's in several countries, but it's an organized event that's a 3-day shoot that takes guys out to 3,200 yards or 3,400 and 3,560 yards.
And 13 rounds.
Oh, yards, yes.
Well, yeah, 13 rounds on day 1 and 9 minutes to qualify for day 2. And if you blow it on day 1, you're out.
Yeah. Or if you don't spot the right targets and you fuck up your shooting partner, you're done.
That's sorry, Terry. From
Do you care to elaborate?
My partner this year, it was a last minute pairing because Mike ended up getting invited to the World, so we ended up shooting with one of our good customers, Terry. And you know, day 1 went pretty good. We actually both scored pretty well. He ended up into the finals, and it was frustrating. Just we didn't go over a plan. Like Mike and I shoot together a fair bit. We have our communication down. There was a pattern we go through, and neither of us, we didn't address it. We didn't talk about it. We need no plan at all. We got on. I got on my target. He got on target. Sent the first one. We didn't see shit. I wasn't confident. He wasn't confident he saw anything. And we sent all for misses, making random win calls, trying to figure out where we're at. And Furlong gets off of it. Where time's up, and he comes over to us. He says, "What fucking target were you looking at?" I said, "The red one." And Terry rolled over. He said, "The fucking blue one."
Yeah.
It was a valuable lesson as to the communication.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Now, say what you will about that particular arrangement at that time. You have to give credit to Terry because he's a quiet guy and he's more on the ball than
he's a phenomenal shooter. Yeah.
He's good.
He's very, very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's why I kind of lent to him. I said, I didn't see anything, man. Like, take your best stab at it. And at those distances, I think that's what people really don't realize is that your misses are not apparent. And it can be a real struggle sometimes to spot to see where you ended up. Well, especially Furlong's range, it's just flat forever. So there's no backstops or anything. Well, except for that giant ravine that we don't get to go see, but
the big
it's like
200 meters wide.
Yeah, like 10,000 meters
line
straight.
Just skips right over top of that ravine, like.
Oh, it's brutal.
Well, and to give credit to Terry,
dumping $60 into that goddamn thing.
Yeah, there was a question that came up here though. It is all known distances that they give them to you the night before. They give you the target size, the distances, but beyond that, there's no spotting. You don't get to watch the other shooters. You have to be fairly far, like laterally offline of the targets before you can get glass and glass downrange. But the last couple of years, you've been able to look downrange and at least monitor environmentals before you get up. But that's it, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty. It's not spectator friendly at the facility that we do it at.
No, you know what? That kind of screws a guy too. Like if you don't think about it, because when you're out in the waiting area or parking lot or whatever, and you're looking down range, because that range is north northwest is the azimuth,
Mhm.
and you get a northwest wind, like more west than north. You honestly think, let's just say, just for simplicity, from the parking lot, you're looking at a 10 o'clock wind. Okay. No worries. I got this sussed out. We're 3/4 value or whatever the hell, right?
Yeah.
And you get to the line, your azimuth changes because there's your lateral shift in position.
hmm
Plus, from the parking lot, you're scanning several different targets because you see the entire array from
Yeah.
here. Now,
Mhm.
over at the firing line, now you're very defined
It's very
like
linear.
this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
And
and even during like your first day course of fire, you generally have, I mean, like what, 500 meters of lateral pan between targets, maybe more.
Yeah,
oh, I would say at
there is a
least,
decent
yeah.
shift
Yeah.
if
So
you have
you're,
your shooting
Yeah.
lanes, and so you can go from full value to 3/4 value. And
Sure
again,
as hell
those
can.
distances, learning all the stuff,
Yeah.
like just we did the camp, what was it, 2 years ago with Rob, and just watching those guys call wind and call shots are just like I'm half stupid.
yeah,
Like,
it was, it
Yeah,
was
okay,
humbling,
Mike.
humbling.
That's fine, and I've thought the same damn thing. However, those guys, and I don't mean to whine about home field advantage or anything, but
oh
those
yeah,
guys have put literally many thousands
thousands.
of
Yeah.
rounds down through those conditions on that range,
Yeah.
Well,
and they can
and there is an
recognize.
advantage. Yeah, you see
Sure,
the
there
same
is, but don't.
conditions. Those guys time it out.
Yes,
Those guys would get up at 6 a.m. and send rounds before anybody shows up, just
I
so they
know.
can get. What was it? Earl got with a 6.5 Creedmoor, got
Oh, that's
2,560 yards. But he's like,
yeah,
man, it was like 6:30 a.m. The sun was just up. We had perfect lighting. There wasn't an ounce of wind, and we
yeah.
sent it. And I mean, having that advantage, and like you say, they train all throughout the day. Whereas as
Yeah.
a competitor, you're luck of the draw. If you got first thing in the morning, like we had a couple of shooters shot first thing in the morning, there was zero conditions. By 2, 3 o'clock, it was
Oh my
miragey
God.
and shitty. Like
Yeah.
the visibility difference was night and day difference.
Yeah.
And
Right.
but
Well,
again, that's part of the competition. That's the luck of the draw through the entire thing. It's
it
even for
very much
everybody.
is. So
Yeah.
there's a couple of things there where, um, first of all, what's everybody else's excuse? So those guys, oh, they're out there all the time. You know what? We could be too, I suppose, if we prioritized enough. Pick a spot
Yep.
at your home range or home area or whatever, and the conditions won't be exactly the same, but I'll bet you they'll mimic them closely.
Yep.
And like the other thing is like, I hate um the yabbits. But they're there all the time. Fuck off. Like, don't use that as a crutch.
Yeah, but if I would have been
And
spotting the
every
right target.
competitor, say
And
that
that's
again.
if you would have been spotting the right target. And I will say
but
this as
Wow.
a last minute pairing, there's something to like you, because Shane and I have played video games and been just stupid and yelling at each other.
Hugged each other. Yeah.
Exactly. You come watch an NRL and they're like, you guys need to be quiet. You guys seem like you're having a domestic. Like, what the hell is going on? But we know exactly where we're at. You'll see us on the line of
Right.
furlongs. And I'll be
Yeah.
Shane's like, I don't know. And I'm like, what color are you looking at? Because I know. I know
Yeah.
Shane.
Especially your two personalities, because both of you are confident enough in what each of you are doing, like your own personal selves,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
it's hard to be convinced otherwise by your partner, no matter how much you trust them. Same
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Jens and me, right? Jens will tell me something, I'm like, nope, that doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah.
Mind you, I trust my German Shane more than you trust yours, I think.
Oh, I trust him with
I'm
a
a
lot of
wind
things.
ninja.
I just always confirm colors because
Yeah.
Well, but we do that as a standard setup protocol. We confirm up what target we're on, where we're looking, who's spotting where. Like we have a whole communication. Steve and Ben had that. You and Kurt have that, right? Steve trained with Homie, so this year or this last season, like they had that. Here's our checklist, right? And I mean, it pronounced to me that it was one of those fundamental things that maybe not everybody takes into. MBT just put out a good video with Chad Heckler talking about your pre-stage prep. Like, what do you go through? And it's your mental checklist. And when you make it habit, you're going to be more consistent. And like Terry was pretty upset for the first 2 hours, but then he come out of the truck and he said, "No, I get it." He says, "We both fucked that up." And like mostly me,
Yeah.
I will own that. But he says, "We didn't have a plan. We didn't communicate. We had done our wind reads and figured out our dope, and we knew where we were going to start. But beyond that, and I mean, we both left learning something. Like I'll go into the next year. The
100%.
2 years ago, we went and bought those fancy on-gun chronographs, the bullet seekers before the Garmin, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, me and Mike get up, and again, Rags is there. He's running you through stuff. They're getting you all orientated. Your heart gets up. You got it set up, and you got your 2 minute setup time. Well, fuck me if I didn't close my phone off, which shut off the interface. So I got on the line, and I had a velocity issue. I went from first fired brass to from virgin brass to once fired, and I had a 50-foot swing. I didn't pick it up. I had the tools. I didn't go through the checklist and make sure I was getting the information. So me and Mike left, and we ended up getting some hits. We got our corrections, but it wasn't great. And we ended up leaving, and it hit my brain. And I'm like, buddy, I'm like, go adjust that Kestrel by 50 feet per second and see what it does. And sure enough, we were dead on to where we got our hits. And it's just one of those things. You're like, it. So much of ELR, well, so much of shooting
Hindsight.
is the mental game.
And hindsight
Oh,
after
man.
the fact and learning of
Yep.
picking up.
We have to be able to evaluate your own mistakes. If you can't openly evaluate your own mistakes,
That
you're never going to grow
real-time
from them.
adjustment, man. Like I just wrote down a bunch of points just out of that little exchange there. Let's start with the game plan though, the mental game plan. Honest to God, I have. Of course, it's hard to tell what's in somebody else's head. You know what you do, guys. Other guys talk about what they do. How often does that play out just like you practice it? And I'm sure a lot of guys will say exactly that way. Some guys will say it and lie. Maybe it's close. Other guys like me, it's like, fuck, I think I got a pretty solid plan. Jens and I have talked about it ad nauseum.
Yep.
And then we get up there and it's
your wing
like,
changes direction.
I'm especially bad because my fucking ADD, it all just kind of goes.
Yep.
Why right now?
I would say overall, when I've shot with Mike or I've shot with Steve, we are fairly good at sticking to the plan.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't see anywhere in where me and Mike, like even screwing up with my phone. It was a new piece of equipment. I didn't have a lot of time on it. Again, it is what it is. Now that we have the Garmin, we ran the Garmins all last year, and it was awesome. We didn't have any issues with running the Garmin because you just turned it on and you saw it, right? So again, some of it was interface. But yeah, no, Mike and I are, and then again, we shoot a lot. Steve and I have been like best friends for 15 years, right? So we're two of those business partners that have had like 2 verbal arguments our entire career together, right? It's just one of those things where it's very easy. And Steve is very methodical. Mike is very methodical. Like he regardless if you could place it or not, but he does have police brain. And he's got an order that he does things, right? So it helps wrangle me in on some stuff. But I'll be honest, I think we generally
he's just fucked up in a uniform is what he is.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Well, and I think what it comes down to is because we've shot a lot together and we do have our plan, we do create a plan so that when crap goes sideways, at least you have, this is Lottie. Somebody wanted to see her. She's there.
Yuke's a dog lover.
when things go off the rails, like all of a sudden we're like, we don't have that velocity swing. You just resort to we didn't have those before. So it's like, all right, if we can't see any splash, generally speaking, we're going over top, come down a mill, see where it goes. And then hopefully you pick something up and you adjust.
Yeah, that plays out fairly reliably, doesn't it? Like if you're not seeing splash,
100%.
Come down a mill and a half.
Well, and that's
dump something in front at the very least.
Yeah, Well, and that's kind of that risk though, because you're purposely duffing one of the king of 2 miles. If they catch you like way off picking a rocket or something and trying to get your
Yeah.
read, you're fucking out. But again, you make an audible
Hey.
like that, and what you say is, I didn't see anything. I think you're over the top of the plate. I want you to come down 1 or 2 mils. Well, you're communicating it in those spotters, like the judges,
Yeah. It's not like pick a
the
rock out
authorities.
right and shoot at it in a
Yeah.
clear field.
Yeah. So
It's
you just can't, they don't like seeing you do it purposefully or with a plan on your first round. Right?
Yeah.
Like if
Hey,
you
we got
know
a
your
little bit.
dope is 21 mils, you don't fucking fire one at 19 mils just to see where you're at, or don't make it obvious.
yeah.
We got way left of topic here, but this is good. It's good
You want me?
conversation,
I
but
got an outline here. You want me to get back to this
no,
outline?
no. Let's continue with this one because like I said, I just wrote down 4 other points just from that short conversation we had earlier. But are there any rules around picking a random rock way the hell off target to get
Yep.
that read?
No,
I've never
100%.
seen
That
that. I'm not saying that I'm
it's in
right.
the king of 2 miles. I don't know if it's in like the other leagues like Spearhead or anything like that, but the king of 2 miles
Sure.
specifically does have, you're not essentially allowed to fire a sighter. But again, you have to be pretty obvious
Define
about
that
it.
though. That's
Yeah,
like
like
hate speech. Define what fucking hate speech is.
Well,
Right?
at the end of the day,
and
you're
honestly,
sacrificing around.
and how many times have
Say
you
it
seen
again, Mike.
guys shoot?
Sorry, I said at the end of the day, like rule or not, you're sacrificing a round. So as if you know the king of 2 miles at all, you get your first round is cold
It's
bore,
a lot of points.
hit or miss.
Yeah.
The next round you shoot is at your first target. That first round hit is worth more than a second round hit. So if you're considering duffing around at something, you're instantly throwing away a crap load of points.
Yep.
That's
Well, and again, it
that's
has
right,
to be.
but consider the conditions, I guess,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
You
and
do
how
have
many
to do that.
times have you seen a guy shoot? Like the first target's typically around a mile, right? So your dope's off or whatever, your kestrel's out. It is what it is. You can be out by 5, 8, 9 mils without it looking really obvious. Sometimes, like we've seen some pretty big
Yeah.
impact zones when guys are getting on that first target and figuring out their range and what's going on, right? And I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying there's a nice percentage there. So how do you call that as being purposeful or versus just not being very good?
Right. And we have I suppose a
Not
wide
very
enough
good.
spectrum of shooters that how can you how do I say this without being a nasty prick? But there's enough, let's just say newer shooters to that type of competition
Mhm.
that
Oh my God, are you getting
Rob
soft in
and
your
the
old
guys
age?
just shut up and listen for a second, please.
Jesus. Inexperienced
How
shooters.
does Rob and his crew deal with something like that? Like it's way off, like 7 mils or something like that, and they're kind of like, "Wow, that was way off." But considering who it is, maybe a first timer or something like that. For one, you don't want to discourage somebody from competing.
Yeah.
For another, it may be legit.
Yeah. Well, Terry and I wrong target. I was giving him dope corrections that ended up having us nearly 4 mils left of target till I finally did see one on my target. So when you're looking at it, they'd be like, these fucking guys started at this target and they ended up over this target. What is happening? So, I mean, you could potentially, but they were hearing the communication, right? They were seeing what the plan was, and that's how they knew, because Rags was right dead nuts behind me. And I watched the video back. Terry videoed it. I watched it, and that poor bastard pacing back and forth. He wanted to say something, but he can't. That's one thing I'll get the furlong guys. It doesn't matter if you're one of the team guys, if you train with them, if you're an alumni, if you're a buddy. The integrity at that facility is fantastic.
Yeah, agreed. Yep, for sure.
I was going to say there's enough experience there that they know communication, shooting, this, that. Yeah. They're pretty hip to it. So
yeah,
I'll trust them.
So considering all that stuff, is there much of a chance to really game anything in that competition? I don't think so.
I honestly don't think there is. Like, again, the only
you game anything.
Well, this is what I mean. It's all random. You don't get to spot or see anything. I mean, you could potentially say the guy who shoots first has the disadvantage because he hasn't spent 3 hours watching and measuring wind. But at the same token, we've seen every single time that those first five guys that go through before 10 a.m. have distinct. Well, no, not that one year. That
100%.
one year we were rained out and you couldn't fucking. Well, Cal Menard, the year he won, that second day, it was like a fucking
Yeah.
torrential downpour until 3 o'clock that afternoon.
Yeah.
So again, it being that it's so randomized, I don't know how you would game it to any distinct advantage beyond the whining and crying and my
Sure.
shot got called back and it fucking bounced into the
Right.
plate. Like me and Mike, between me and Mike on 1 year, we had 3 callbacks. We didn't question
I
it
finally
once.
hit it. He's
Yeah.
like, chain. I'm like,
Oh, I know that elation of I'm on and I'm fucking moving, and then they're like, no.
Just by your tone, I know I'm not getting this.
you watch the flash and you're waiting for the ding, eh? And you've counted
Yeah.
off like 12 seconds. You're like, okay, now it's going too long. And it's like no hit. Son of a bitch. And then you got to
Well, I
make a
can tell
guess on
you-
what you're doing.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Personally, I can tell you from the first year that I competed, I drew first spot um, on the round robin or whatever you want to call it, the preliminaries.
day one.
Yep.
And you know what? Later years, I'd have taken that all day. But first time at that competition, man, I would have
The
appreciated
pressure.
just a few conversations. And you know,
Yeah.
when everybody comes out of that shooting box or shooting building or
Platform, yeah,
whatever platform, sure. They'll have conversations with other shooters, but it's kind of guarded, and I think rightly so.
Yeah.
You know, guys will tell you relatively what they saw, but they don't want to give away too much, and I think that's the way it should be.
But do you
kind of a
truly want to
community,
trust them
whatever.
either?
Well, no, that's right. Well, that's I don't know
I was
too many
holding
people
17
there
mils
that would
left.
really steer you left.
Yeah.
It
to be
depends on who
honest.
asked me.
Yeah. No, that's
Depends. I mean,
so
every time
you're the dick.
Jens asks me, I give him a completely different direction on wind.
Oh, I know that. He knows that too.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, I would have appreciated just a few real low level basic interactions
Yeah.
before I got up there to shoot the first time. Now,
Yeah.
every time I will take first spot every time.
I want to go
Yeah,
first.
Every time. Yeah.
Well,
at
and I'll
that
be honest,
particular range.
that energy of that first time we went to the King of 2 Miles has not been there since. Like it was so fun shooting a little 300 PRC. I was shooting
Oh,
that
man.
factory ammo with 150 ES blowing primers out. They're watching me pick brass and primers out of my gun. I'm running my repeater
Oh.
single shot so the primers don't end up in the lug abutments. And it was just fun and it was exciting. It was something that we had never seen or done before. And I'm not saying it's becoming old hat now because it's not like I've won it, but it's you do
But you're kinda
certainly
in the
get more
groove.
comfortable. Yep.
Yeah.
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 Well,
for
and,
sure.
and that might be
Yeah.
why we have NRL boners. We've only gotten to shoot 2 matches and it's still new and exciting and it is very different
Sure.
from PRS, right? So like
Sure.
I say, this is me transitioning over.
Yeah.
Smooth.
I never thought I'd hear those
Yeah.
words, Shane, but congratulations.
Exactly.
Hey,
She, her.
I'd make a pretty lady.
Now,
No, but I mean-
well, I got a couple of things still from that little short conversation we had a while ago. Velocity migrations and barrel cleaning. Now, barrel cleaning is something over the past 2 seasons, especially with those ELR rifles, I've kind of dived into and analyzed more than I ever thought I would in the past. And
Did you talk to
I've
Steve
seen
recently?
differences. I haven't.
You have not talked to him since he cut your barrel open?
No, not in detail about that
Okay.
barrel. No.
So this is perfect because honestly, this is something that's come up with me and Steve here recently. So we've got a couple of guys on our team. We've got Alex Sherwood and Adam Cool, both shooting 6 GTs,
Sure.
and both have been complaining about like a 5-6 inches of really, really, really hard carbon in front of the throat, like 5 inches of it that they're having to use IOSO and bore paste it out. And Alex has been reporting velocity migrations as that constriction increases. Well, talking to Josh at Patriot Valley, he said the GTs are actually a little bit notorious for it. And he said it's actually a fairly common occurrence. I would assume it's got something to do with the shorter, fatter case and the shoulder angle and where that pressure is building. But either way, we went and cut, well, not we, Steve went and milled back the chamber in the first, I think, 6 or 7 inches of your XC barrel. How many rounds did
Sure.
you have on it?
386.
Yeah, so probably not done, but it looked brand
No.
fucking new. It had a big carbon ring in the shoulder, it had another one just outside the neck, and it had some hard carbon depositing, but you'd be surprised. That IBI did not look like it had more than 50 rounds on it.
Uh, Based on what metric exactly? Because the fire cracking is one thing. We all come to terms with fire cracking. Every barrel gets it. It's just a matter of it's
Isn't that what the
there.
copper
You
fill is
deal with
for?
it. That's
It was
what.
surprisingly
Yeah,
little, like less than I've seen on some of my small ones. So Steve sectioned my last
6 inches
33X.
is what
Yeah,
I figured. Yeah.
no, hardly anything. It was unreal. I'm not even joking. Hardly any fire cracking, especially for a case that size. So Steve cut mine after we saw yours. I took mine in, my last
Yeah.
33XC barrel, the KS. He milled it off. Same thing. And again, that barrel stopped shooting for me at 450. I kept trying to clean it, getting back, and it wouldn't come back. Like 6, 7 inches. It wasn't overly fire cracked, but it was a carbon mess. So we're reevaluating how we're doing those deep cleans on those big guns. But
Yeah,
it,
this is where I'm a little bit, what do you say, confused, concerned, don't have enough data, whatever. Where I got to o- over all of last season was because the previous season, um, it was fairly routine that I would clean right down to bare metal with IOSO, get all of the carbon out, especially that because the 33XE runs a lot of goddamn pressure.
yeah,
That carbon ring, make sure you got that damn thing out of there, get that hard carbon out of there. I mean, when you work on carbon, your copper's going to come anyway. Wasn't really concerned about that. That barrel was great right up until the end, and then it just fucked right off
It
on me.
fell hard.
I
well, and
still
that's
can't
what I found.
understand it.
I went through
Hmm.
three, right? So I went through three different KSs. My first one I shot solids out of. We were out of that right away. You and me had to
Sure,
pull bullets on your tailgate. I
you
lost that
bet.
one at 265, and even reloading the cup and cores, I couldn't get it to shoot again. We put the second
Mm.
one on. I shot that one out with A tips, and it fell apart at about 465 rounds. Where
I
even
remember you
after me,
saying, yeah.
like I would soak it, I would leave it overnight with CLR, I would clean it out,
Okay.
I'd bore scope it. I honestly thought it looked really good. I didn't think there was an issue. So we pulled that one and we put the last one on. Oh, that's the one that Steve just cut for me. The last one I ended up selling to a fella, and we're gonna give him a rebarrel when it's time for him to come in for it. But it was one of those things where it stopped shooting around 450 again. So I don't see them lasting a lot longer than that. But then again, we got one guy, Clint Harwood out east. He shoots Valcartier quite a bit. It's one last couple of
Mhm.
seasons. He's shooting a
Right.
338 enabler, and he's been getting like 14 to 1600 rounds on them. I don't get
What's
it. It's
he?
got even
What
more powder.
is he pushing for velocity?
About 3180, so about the same as we were on the XC, but
Okay.
with a much bigger case.
Right.
So I would assume instead of
Sure.
pushing 75,000, he's probably pushing 60,000.
Hmm.
But again, he's still shooting another 12 grains, 15 grains more powder.
That's a lot.
Right. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes
He's,
sense.
he's right
Bigger,
there. Clint
bigger
Harwood,
case.
1400.
Yeah. But he's gotten it on three different cases now, or three different barrels. Like I
Is
think
that
he's on
right?
his fourth one from us now. Yeah. So I don't know. And he's shot both KS and IBI. It didn't seem to really change as far as longevity between the two, a whole pile. But
Mhm.
his is one of those outliers that always sticks in my brain that has me asking questions.
That's interesting as hell. And let me just take this opportunity for the people watching and listening. Shane's talking from he's one of the owners of EM Precision Rifles in Alberta. They build a lot of these things, so there's a lot of good data coming out of this man's mouth right now. So this is really interesting. Getting out of a 33 caliber barrel, running still that 3150, 3180 range. You'd kind of expect to see. I mean, aside from maybe some differences in case design that might support less, like the old articles from the old bench resters and that used to talk about powder impingement, like that high
Yeah.
velocity unburnt powder hitting that rifling, chewing
Yeah.
that away, is, and depending on the powder you use, right? The
Well,
kind of
and
the
that may even
the
be it too.
500 series of Vitavoris are sort of notorious for
They're great for
because their heat of
velocity.
combustion is yeah, they're great for velocity, but their heat
Yeah.
of combustion
Yeah.
is quite a bit higher. That's how they get their velocity, right?
Nitro.
Velocity
Yeah.
really is a byproduct of pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of the double base powders, right?
Yeah.
Are notorious for erosion. So this is really Clint, where he was getting 1,500 rounds or whatever it is out of that 338 enabler. I didn't know anybody was doing that. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
A couple things, I guess. What's that shoulder angle? Did it stay the same?
It's
It's just a simple neck down.
It is just a neck down, the shoulders in the same place as far as I can tell, because you can just neck
Okay.
down the 37 enabler brass. Daryl May, we just finished up one for him as well.
Yeah.
And being with
Is
that
that
Rob
right?
Formosa with his match, both Steve and Homie were talking about just doing, because they already have all the enabler brass and dies and everything, right? So just going down to 338, they'd be able to qualify for Formosa's match. Right. So
Ah,
it's
that
interesting to me. It's just
yeah.
it for me personally, having shot a 33 XC. If I did a 338 again, I would really lean to a 338 Lapua improved or a 338 Norma improved or Kinport rifles out of the States there. There's Clint. They've got
Yeah.
a 338 KPR, which is essentially a 40-degree Norma on a 338. So it'll mag feed versus the AI that won't. But I don't think I would go. I don't think I'm going to spend a lot of time chasing cartridges over 3,000 feet per second. I just don't see the advantages, and I've seen them consistently be more finicky,
Yeah.
right? I can load up most of my stuff to 2,900, and I don't see a lot of cleaning problems. I don't see the shortened barrel life. I don't see the velocity migrations. And I mean, that's my enabler. I was running at 2920 for legal reasons.
Right.
But it got hot. Like the powder I'm using, I was over 3080 and I was having stiff ejection and problems. And then all of a sudden I had velocity inconsistencies. So like I say, I'm going to slow it back down to that 2900. Our 25 Creedmoors run 2900 really well. It just seems to be an easy number.
You know what? I was just thinking as you were talking there, is that something maybe we're not realizing? And I know it can't be linear across the board, but 2,900 feet per second in so many chamberings kind of
I think it,
honestly seems to be a very sweet spot. You look at the
28,
6.5
29.
284 when it was big, right?
yep.
2950, something like that, I think is when it was on top of the heap for F class back 20 years ago, whatever the heck that was.
Yep.
You look at a lot of your sixes now. I mean, except for like the six Creed and that, I think you're running
People are
over
downloading.
3,100.
Well,
Are
and
they?
a lot of guys run their Creedmoors at 2950.
A lot of the guys are downloading somewhere in the like 2880s, and they're changing from
Is that
4350 powder to 4831 shortcut or even H1000 because they're like, well,
slower yet?
I don't even.
Yep.
I used H1000 or sorry, 4831 shortcut for an entire season because I just couldn't find 4350. I was running
your
the
sixth Creed?
108s in my sixth Creed. I was running the 108s at
Mm.
rated about 3,000.
This is interesting stuff. So, Vitavori N555, where's it on the chart versus 4350 and 4831? It's a little faster than
Yeah.
4831, isn't it?
It would be like a double based 4831. I think you would see similar performance because N160 is
Damn
pretty
close, yeah.
comparable, and N560 are very close to 4831.
Is that right? Son of
Yeah,
a
well,
gun.
that's what I'm going to be trying. Like Mike and I are building twin 7 Sherman short mags right now, and again, this is kind of the NRL stuff. Well, we've been looking at, and again, a lot of it is heaviest weight bullet in caliber that you would kind of see now. So like on the Creedmoors, yeah, there's 156s, but really the 140 is where we've gone through from
Right.
the old 260 days. That's where it is, right? I don't think
Yeah.
it means going grossly heavy, but I think if you get the heaviest bullet you can at your twist rate for the calibers and you aim for that 2850 to 2950, guns just perform. So whether it's the 6 Creed with 105s, 110s, or the 6.5 with the 140s, or the 300 PRC with the 230s, the 300 Norma with the 250s, it just all seems to line up really consistently. So we're looking at the 7 Sherman short, which is for the guys who don't know about Sherman Wildcats, he's kind of like our generation's P.O. Ackley. He's taken the heavyweight bullets and figured
Right.
out the throat design. So he'll take the 7SS as a SOM case, shortened, fattened, blown out to 40 degrees so that a 180 seats in the neck junction. Where's one? In the neck junction with the entire bullet out. So if you see that, it's not taking up the case capacity, and that feeds 2.92 inches. So that feeds out of a short magnum properly. I've also
That's
got
a
it set
Sherman.
up.
Sorry, Shane.
Yeah,
So
Sherman short. So I've also got it with the 190 Burger and the 197 Sierra will all short feed. So I think the 180 we can break 3,000. I think the 190s, and that's kind of what we're planning on doing to start with to see where it ends up. But if I can get the 190s around 2,900 on a 26-inch barrel, I think that's right where I want to be. And I'm kind of balancing weight versus case capacity to stay in that 2,900 space.
yeah, even
This
28.
is
I'm
this is
it's-
really interesting to me. It's never really dawned on me until now, but it kind of indirectly, I've sort of got for that, with the exception of that damn 33XC. Like that 33XC, we saw what was really possible with that case design and all that kind of stuff. So of course, a guy I think gets kind of caught in, well, holy shit, this thing will run near 3,200 with a 300 grain bullet.
Yep.
Why in the fuck wouldn't we run it there?
Well, and again, it comes down to your barrel life and your velocity migration, your cleaning
Well, we
regime.
found out. Well,
Right.
yeah.
And so like my 338 I used Rotumbo. So I didn't have to go to a crazy powder on a 26-inch barrel, 28-inch barrel. I got 2980. Well, if you like look at Christy Tubb, she runs her XC. She runs it at 3050 on 32-inch barrels.
You were saying that last fall, and she had always been the proponent of 3150 last I read any of her comments.
Yeah, she's been running
And
them slow lately, like last couple of seasons. And again, 3150, like mine, yours,
yeah,
Jens's.
yeah, yeah.
We did those couple for Kurt out east. Like we did a bunch of them, right? And they all ended up at like 3140 to 3180, whether it was an A-tip or a burger. Like it was really consistent where guys ended up finding some place for them to shoot. But we also fairly consistently saw a lot of them dying around 500 rounds. So for me to go down to like, so the 300 KPR, what they're advertising on that Norma Improved, right? A 338 Norma Improved. They're advertising that 2950 to 3050 on a 28-inch barrel. The 338 Lapua, I've seen guys push them harder. I mean, ATRS did them for years. I think they were hard on brass, but they were
2970
pushing.
to 30. They were 3100. They were up there.
Yeah,
30,
we have
50.
USA. Yeah, US 869. You could get them up to 31, but it was so temperature
Oh, that stuff is
unstable.
horrible. Yeah.
It's brutal. Meter's amazing, but so I
Yeah.
ended up going down to Rotumbo, and like I say, I slowed it down a little bit. But the 338 AI for me was a very easy gun to shoot. The recoil was nice on it.
Sure.
Again, it's a 300 burger at 3,000 plus or minus. Like if you can't do it with that, then you should be playing. I think personally, you should be playing in the 375 market.
Knowing what I know now, I don't know that I would disagree with you.
Well, I'm not going to say it's the
Expensive
be all.
lessons, hey?
Well, and I'm not saying it's the be all end all. Like a lot of guys really love chasing that speed. There's a whole clique of guys down to the US. And don't get me wrong, the US
Yeah.
between barrels, components, everything, it's so much fucking cheaper than what we do.
Oh,
But they're chasing that
terrible. Yeah.
33, 34. Like we got a buddy who watches this all the time, Mitch Croxall. And I mean, if it's not
Okay.
Mach fucking 7, he's not interested in it. It's not
like
the
my
most
6
overboard case.
cruiser I had.
Yeah. Well, dude, he's got a 6 PRC. I think he said he was running like 37 or 38 on it. Like,
What?
I
oh
was
my God, he loves it.
3250 with 115s, and I thought I was a hot rod.
Yeah.
I still
His
got
30
3,000 rounds off that.
You are.
Yeah. He runs a 338, 378 Weatherby as one of his light ELR rifles. And it just,
My.
yeah. No, like I say, I've been there. And me personally, my personal choice is going to be 2950 plus or minus, and I'll find my bullet, my caliber combination to play in that space.
man, I think there's a lot of meat to that. That it honestly, I really haven't thought about it too much before this damn conversation.
Now,
Huh.
don't get me wrong, like on a hunting caliber, I would completely recommend going speed over that because again, you're not shooting as much.
That's a
Like
different game.
Yeah.
Chase over at Curtis has been doing he's got his I fucking can't remember what the VP no, I can't remember what he calls it, but he's got his little lightweight hunting 22-inch carbon on a 6.5 PRC, but he runs 130 Game Kings. So he's pushing like 32 or 3300 even out of a short barrel. And watching those guys, they took a plink at a piece of steel at 1800. Its time of flight was impressive. Energy on target, like there's something to
I
be
bet.
said for going Mach 8 on an animal. There's Mitch.
Look at this fucker. 37XC now. Tight shirt, old Ray is long gone. No more Weatherby for this guy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not true. He's never going to give up Weatherby. That's why we don't get to build his rifles.
Well, you
Steve
know
has
what?
to be on those.
I had thought about going to the 33XE. Like before last season, Jens and I actually talked about it because I never really did like that. What do you say? Bore to powder ratio on that
Yeah.
33XE.
Mhm.
And the
And
37's shooting well. That's what Terry was shooting. He runs the
right,
375 grain cutting edge at
sure.
2950 on a 32-inch barrel. But he even commented that the recoil impulse and like shooting a solid, you never get the same feedback you get of a cup and core. But once you start
Sure.
to cross to the 338, 375 realm, I mean, 375, you almost have to shoot a solid, even from any economic standpoint, they just make more sense. 338, you're going to
Is
play with
that
the
the
burgers.
only reason?
I think so. Like, I mean, the cup and core space, Burger just released their cup and core, but it's like fucking $5 a bullet. There's a
A-tip.
Yeah,
375 A tip, and I think Steve's paying 275 or something a bullet.
yeah.
Well, going and now it's not a gun you're shooting 100 rounds at a match at, right? So again, if you're
No,
truly
that's right.
trying to get far, the solids are more consistent. Which one's that? An A
Yeah,
tip? Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
I shot them and they work. On target,
Yeah,
they're
I think so.
amazing on the 375. The A-tips on a target, it's like watching a hand grenade go off on steel versus a solid.
Well, and to be truthful, yeah,
Then that's the
yeah, you
400
bet.
laser. Like it just
Right.
and honestly, even in the chamber design and stuff, they seem to fit really well. Like bore rider right to lands, they just seem to fit the
Sure.
enabler chamber perfectly. And the 375s, like you say, you got a little bit less capacity. You drop 25 grains off, and Terry's
Mhm.
XC shoots right where ours does.
Is that right?
The dope was
That's
very close, like almost no
is
difference.
that right?
Yeah.
Ah, God damn. You know what? Between Jens and I, that's kind of been the at least part of the appeal with the cup and core bullets is their feedback. Let's say,
Yeah.
um, and it kind of scared us off a little bit a couple of years ago when you and Steve were having so much trouble with the solids. Um, it sounds like you've got that worked out now,
But that was
but
one
that
specific
was a bit of a
company that's
different
no longer
game.
around. Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Is
Yeah,
that
I
right?
think it
Different
was more
alloy.
specific to the and it was the alloy because like we obviously well I don't know obviously we're now a one of the Patriot Valley Arms dealers for Canada. So talking with Josh has been awesome. Like he was involved in a lot of the design of the original solid. So he's actually the patent holder on the Warner flatline, and Warner is licensed to manufacture those. Like they've had a manufacturing agreement for years. He releases the Seneca and the
Chinchaga? No, not
no
Cayuga.
Cayuga. So he's got his own solids as well, but they are the flatline design, right? When we started having those issues, we reached out to Dan Warner, we reached out to Josh Kuntz,
I remember you
uh,
talking about that. Yeah.
and then George, who's now passed away from Badlands, and we started having the conversation to figure out if it was a bore diameter versus the solids diameter, like what the issues could be. And 3 out of the 4 vendors all came back saying that it was actually an alloy, and the Badlands were way cheaper. Like they were actually really quite affordable as far as a bullet, but he was using a different alloy at the time. And whereas if you go to the other guys, they all use a much more similar copper, and again more similar
Yeah.
results. Different, very drastically different designs between like the Warner PVA versus the cutting edge. But we've had a lot of success shooting the cutting edge, and I mean obviously we're a PVA and a cutting edge dealer, so we can get what we want. But the cutting edge to me presented an economic value and a consistency. I mean, they've got more of the King of 2 Miles records than any other bullet does. So
And they're not the highest
that
BC.
right?
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, honestly, I don't think it's so much about chasing BC as it is about chasing BC variance and consistency. I think
Oh,
once you
here's
get to
this whole
the
conversation again, eh?
right, but I'll
Yeah.
shoot a CNR over a Hornady, even if the Hornady's got the
Oh,
higher BC.
amen. Yep. That's going back to a little while ago. Bending Ballistics chimed in. He says 147s in the Creed equals money. I don't know if
We're
I
not
can get on
talking
that
same money.
bus.
Yeah.
We're not going to go there. 147s are pretty much.
No.
You know what?
Yeah, and I've got.
We can
I
say
think I
whatever.
have 3,000 of the damn things left sitting.
Yeah,
They
this projectile is like
that,
350 a piece.
yeah, that article
Yeah.
came out and basically was like, yeah, the 147 is probably the most non-consistent
Yeah,
bullet out there. But you know what?
inconsistent,
There's
yeah.
lots of people that shoot them and they work. And
They
further,
do fine. But if you expect to go past 1,400 or something with that,
no, walk away.
and on a 20-inch plate, I wish you
Hmm.
luck.
Well, and you got to be honest too. And I'm not. This isn't taking the piss out of shooters, but it really takes like we all follow Cortina, we all follow these big names and these big fancy shooters that whether it be Heckler or Cologne or whoever it is, they're at the top level of their game and they're seeing that result and they can differentiate between small percentages. I
Isn't
would
that
hazard to
something?
say
Yeah.
that better than 70% of the shooters, precision shooters who are out there, are not necessarily going to statistically recognize the difference between a Hornady ELDM and a Burger, right? I mean, you might see it in your odd group, but I think if you're just banging steel and you're looking to stretch it out, I think most people,
Unless you're
again,
shooting behind a Doppler for every round, you're not going to see it.
No, that's right, and especially for the kind of everyday casual shooter, even if they go to PRS competitions and that with bullets like the 147, it's going to do just fine.
well, we saw, I saw it was an interesting thing. So you know Joel Blackburn, friend of us, right? He had loaded up and showed his 6 Creed, right, and had a 10.5 SD. Well, sure enough, everybody get in there shitting on him about this 10 SD like it was too much. He's like, it's a coyote gun. I'm going to shoot out to 800. What I think people don't realize is they get caught up in something that they've seen, and reloading itself is such a neurotic process that you whittle into the thousands and this and that.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to step back and take an actual measurement and see what that measurement's impact is. And you can go and take your Kestrel, put it at 1,000 yards, and change your velocity by 10 feet per second. And most people are going to be pretty shocked at how little of a difference it actually makes and whether they're capable of holding that difference or not. Don't get me wrong, the more consistent your velocity, the more consistent they're going to shoot.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at sometimes I think we spend a lot of time chasing those last 2 or 3 feet per second on an SD where you would learn more by going out and shooting in the wind.
Man, the amount of times that I've seen discussions on forums and that about 1/10 wind difference or 1/10 resulting from uh pressure or temperature or whatever, 1/10, and guys pissing themselves over this. Like,
Yeah.
are you able to fucking hold 1/10, guy?
Yeah. We had a guy who was
have
who
that
was
talk with
pushing it.
yourself.
I want my neck tension to be 1,000, but then I need to
Oh,
account
brother.
for spring back and blah blah blah. And you're like, you can't do any of that.
That
Like,
guy
you
sounds very crafty.
can't.
You see these things?
Yeah.
They're probably the next worst invention aside from a bore scope.
Yeah.
They're precision ground pins.
Yep.
And I have a range of them to see exactly where my neck, well, at one time, to see exactly where my neck tension was with a couple of different calibers. And do you think I could shoot the goddamn difference day to
We
day?
all go down rabbit holes, man.
Yep.
Well,
Why not?
you guys
Absolutely.
you guys all know Ben Click. We built him a rifle for his class there a few years ago, and it was just a Remington. It was a fairly economic build. He wanted to have something that the average man, I guess you could say, would be able to get into. He called us up, and again, like I was happy that the rifle shot. Don't get me wrong, but he sent us one of those 9-star targets, and it had 9 5-round groups in it that were all under half a minute. and a lot of them in the 2s and the 3s shooting factory ammo. And while Steve and I were, of course, happy that the gun performed that way, it was
Sure.
more of seeing that mental discipline. Because I guarantee most people cannot shoot 45 rounds consistently, sub half MOA, even if the gun's capable of it. As a mental achieve, like as a feat, it
Like
was
my
Sure.
round
unreal.
group, and there's always one off to the
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
100%.
Because there's that one guy in there, the one guy out of the 7 living in there going, no, pal, absolutely not.
I know. So I think
stubborn
it does take a
ADHD
lot.
not
And I
going
think
in
that's
there.
one of the things that people benefit from the most is acknowledging what their true limitations are. And I talk to a lot of people
Oh,
who build
man,
guns, and
for
lots of
sure.
guys are very good about it, and they're always very
Yep.
happy when they get a gun that will outperform them, because it takes that variable away. You're not questioning that. Now you can focus on yourself and where can you improve as a shooter, right? Like I'm a mid-pack shooter. I'm not a great PRS shooter. It is what
Yeah,
it is,
you've
right?
always acknowledged that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
but I know that it's not my gear. I mean, sometimes it's me fucking around with experimental cartridges or reloading or whatever I'm
Sure.
doing. I'm testing whatever. But in the end, I know that when I take one of Steve's guns out, the gun is always going to outperform me. Even if I'm not even that good at reloading, it's still going to perform to at least my ability or better. So then I can focus on
Sure.
myself. I don't really have to get caught in the weeds. Other than those stupid 6 arcs, I really regret that decision. But we learned something from it, regardless of what fucking happened. We learned.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those
I
things
remember
where
that excitement talking to you about
Well,
that.
it just the excitement came from I get to stay out of the reloading room for a while.
yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I think the real thing is I started loading for it right at the end, and I moved over to my 25 Creed because I'm like, well, if I'm going to reload, I might as well, and I'm using it for my NRL rifle.
Sure.
But
And it's
reloading
steady.
for it was a massive, massive difference because I was sitting at like 2,800 feet per second. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty perfect for a 6 mil with
Yep.
that
With a
small
105.
and I was shooting a 108.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the 108
So,
Burger Hunter Elite or whatever. But it's like you just see that thing. It's like, okay, great. I stayed out of the reloading room, but I shot like dog shit.
yeah.
So
Is that
know,
right?
it is what it
Mike
is.
and I really
Yeah.
struggle with that arc, and it makes me kind of want to slap her. But Carrie shot really, really well with the arc. I don't understand why her gun performed a lot more consistently than ours did, but Mike and I were chasing massive velocity swings from lot to lot. It got to be too much hassle. And don't get me wrong, I still got some, and we still have 2 half shutout barrels. So Malcolm's going to be
Fuck.
shooting this season.
I
He's going
built
to be
another
shooting.
arc. Woo!
Yeah,
It's
he's going to
like
shoot a couple of
$5.
arcs, but again, do I want to run a 105 at 2750 or do I want to run a 135 at 2920?
Yeah.
And I
It's
shot
pretty easy
about,
math.
yeah, and I immediately started shooting better scores again, going back to my 25. So I'm a huge quarter bore whore. I think it's the greatest fucking thing you could buy. I think it's the best caliber out of anything you could fucking possibly get. If you don't hand load, you should learn how to hand load just so you can build a 257.
I have
Whether
three.
it's a 2547 or a 25 Creed, I think they're the fucking greatest.
For
I
Yukai Kaizai? I can't even pronounce that. Yukai Kazi. Whatever.
Yukai Kazi.
We were using Hornady match ammo. We got a smoking deal, I think, between the two of us. Well, three of us, because Carrie was. I think we bought like 6,500 rounds or 7,000 rounds. It was nuts.
Carrie and I were shooting the black. You shot the match.
And I shot the match. Yeah. Which, it still worked. But reloading was a major help to that. But I'm just going to stick with the 25, a little more weight. And guys,
I got it.
Yeah.
I went and got it loaded with the 90 grain cutting edge solids. With Varget, I got this doing 3160.
Is that right?
Dude, it is a little fucking laser beam. The problem is, like, it's going fast enough that you'll see plates inside of like 600 swing. But beyond that, these little solids, they leave like a penny on the plate. So when you're shooting PRS, unless there's a flasher on it, you're totally fucked. So I'm going to give these to Malcolm, so I know he won't beat me his first year.
I owned a 25-06 in a hunting rifle. I don't know, 25, 27 years ago, and I thought that thing was fantastic then. But you kind of get swept up in what everybody else is doing and proving is good for whatever discipline in that. And now I'm yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I started down the 6.5 hole with a 260 that was still the best rifle I have ever owned.
Yep.
And for many reasons. And I'm still there. I am still a fan, but Jens and I now, having built that 25 by 47 improved, you know what? I'm falling in love with that guy more and more all the time. The
Falling in
caliber,
love with
not
Jens or the gun?
no. Let me be clear that it's not the guy; it's the gun.
Okay, careful. Just checking.
Well, I
So-
had an interesting call yesterday. So we're talking about the 25.
Okay.
So Dale Jansen over at Chinchaga Bullets, right?
Yes,
Yeah. So
yeah.
Dale calls me up and he asks if we've got a 25 300 WSM reamer. I'm like, fuck no.
Oh my God, yeah.
He says, well, what's the biggest 257 you have? I'm like, well, we've got a 25 SOM. Like, I can get the 25 Sherman if there's like requests for it. I honestly thought the 25 PRC would have been a better choice in Canada just for brass availability. But either way, he says,
I
well,
suppose.
can I send you guys a barrel and have you guys spin this up? And I said, yeah, we'd be happy to, right? But what are you doing with it? Because I know he makes a 135. I bought some of them and they look a lot like the profile is very similar to a burger, but with like a real rebated bowtail. So I'm looking forward to shooting those here in the spring. I want to load test his because they're a little cheaper than burgers, and I like supporting local when I can. But he has a 160 he's been selling to the States that need a 7 twist. Well, now he's he's working on a 180, and that's what this 25 SOM is for. He has a 6 twist jury barrel coming, and he's trying 180s out of 25 Magnums.
180s? I saw his 155s, I thought.
It's going to be 4 inches long.
155 he tried? Oh my God.
I had some 140s that I tried from him. Oh, yeah. Once you start breaking 140 on a 257, that bullet is stupid long.
Lord.
But he chases that hunting space, right? He chases guys who like high weight and big magnums. They want penetrating power. He's got this cult following. He said he sold 3,000 of these things down to the States already, the 160. So he thinks there's a market for the 180s. And I was like, well, I guess that's the difference because in the 135s, we placed a team order and I think it was fucking 7,000 for the season. You got to build match bullets, Dale. That's where all the volume goes. He said if he got a $5,000 round order, he'd have a heart attack.
Yeah, no kidding. So your 25 Creeds, what are you getting for velocities with 135s? I'm assuming you're shooting 135s?
Yeah. So I'm running all the 135s. Yeah. Both of our carbons, as well as my Steel Viking, are all doing 29.25. My Brux does 28.80. Mike's other Viking, like my load and Mike's Viking. So I have one load. I've shot now in 7 barrels and it's worked right from my jury.
Is that right?
I started with the 131s on the jury until they kind of went defunct.
Sure.
Then I moved to the 135s.
Oh, but Sierra's making a good 131 now, and it's not
the other one.
It is 100% that bullet. It's a great fucking bullet. Those ones I had running about 29.80. But yeah, like in everything except for my Brux.
Not a blackjack.
Yeah, hashtag not stolen. But like my Brux fouls a little bit. Like it shoots really well, don't get me wrong, but it's slow and it fouls a little bit. Like it's the one that's out, but it shoots the same load very accurately. Like all of my barrels so far, and I got to test Carrie's out because we just chambered hers up. Will hold a 10 round 3/4 minute group, and for me to be able to just bulk load for a couple of barrels because I switch barrel my NRL, but then my PRS rifle is also a 257, right? So I'm currently actively running 325 barrels plus carries, and I'm fingers crossed. I'm hoping it's the same.
I've got 2, and I'm at. I have to do different loads, which is weird for the guns, but yeah, Shane and I's NRL 25s are within 3 feet per second of each other. So when we're doing dope, it's phenomenal. We get one range, one dope.
Oh, no kidding.
Easy peasy.
I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And then I know I shot, like when I was shooting Worlds, I had this and it was shooting around that 29.05 to 29.10. And then I got the pleasure of shooting with Keith Rudisil from MPA, who's a machine. And he's like, I got it downloaded in like the 2840, 2850. He's like, I like it better there. And I'm like, okay, cool. And shoot like a house on fire. So who am I to say crap? But yeah, I don't know. That 2800 to 2900 just seems to be the sweet spot on a lot of stuff. So I'm not for PRS, all that stuff. It's like you don't need to chase speed per se. Like you don't want to go so slow that you're like, well, now I've negated the benefits of having a decent bullet. But shoot it where it
Are
shoots.
you?
Well,
Yeah.
and so Mark and Rob, they got their 25s done and load developed together. Same thing. They a couple of our customers, they ended up following Mike and I around at an NRL match to kind of see what it was about. They were like our personal social media team. It was fucking awesome. We had like an entourage. You'd walk up and all the RSOs are like, "Oh, it's these guys," right? So
We're not
they loaded theirs up and they're both shooting sub half and they're both running 2880 and 2888. So again,
Kidding.
the barrels came in a little bit slower than what I've seen, but they're also
Sure.
using Peterson brass, and that's kind of I think where we're seeing the Peterson is settling in about 50 feet slower than the Lapua. Just judging by
Is it a
yours
little
and
bit
Nelson's.
heavier then? A little bit thicker?
It just
than
isn't
the
holding the
Lapua
pressure
side?
the same. Like Mike and Nelson were both running the 25 Creedmoor Peterson large rifle, and it looks like they're getting case web separations at the same speeds that I'm on my 8th or 9th firing with Lapua.
He was at
So
2878, and I was at like 3000 or 29 flat. And I had one where I was like, this, I'm glad I found this. It looked like somebody cut it with a welder, but it's just a little line there. And I'm like, okay, so I'm just going to back it off. And it worked great in my NRL rifle. And I switched over the load and I actually had to increase the powder a little bit, but I don't know if that was a lot change or just the barrel. But I'm like, well, if I'm going to wreck my brass, I either need to change my brass or just download it a bit. I don't know what it is.
and that's
So
honestly why I
want to
like
take
the
this
25.
opportunity right now to clarify for all the tradesmen out there: welders don't cut. Stick to being a cop, Mike.
Sorry, plasma cut. Torch.
Laser beam.
Laser. Sharks with freaking lasers. Yeah,
But that's
I'm
why
not a
I'm a
welder.
big-
Steve is the welder. I don't. I'm just like,
There-
make heat, fire metal, do its stuff.
I just had to be a dick. That's
Well, you
it's
are.
in my nature.
Well, it's
Thank
the
you.
uranium in your blood, you know.
You sure know how to make a girl blush.
But that's one.
Okay, I
big
just want to
reason I
back
like
up
the
a little
25.
bit. It's Jens and I have been finding that too. It makes a
even
lot
for-
of damn sense.
Even for getting dies and stuff, like I use Win full length bushing dies. All I do is put in a 257 cal bushing, neck it down. I didn't even change my cedar stem. It works for the burgers just fine. I buy Lapua 6.5 Lapua 6.5 Creedmoor Lapua brass small rifle primer, CCI 450s. I mean, like I shot a 6.5 47 forever, right?
You
So
bet.
moving up to this, I went with the Creed brass just so I had some brass management. My wife was shooting a 6XC. I had a 6.5 by 47. I didn't want to fuck that up with having a 25 based off of one of those cases. So the Creedmoor was right there. But Lapua brass is the answer for everything.
Yeah, says our Texan friend way down south there. Yeah.
Oh, Eric?
Immigrant. Yeah. You take the blue box and you pair it with the stuff in the yellow box, and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's honestly great advice.
Yeah, it really is. It's pretty hard to argue with that.
Hard to mess that up.
So you're going to come shoot any NRL matches with us this year or what?
Probably not.
Don't be like that.
Listen, this sounds like I'm pulling my chute, but honestly, my back bugs me so bloody much. I had X-rays, I don't know, last spring sometime, and they found now 5 fractures in my back. So
Jesus.
It kind of plays
a
little bit
Nancy
on
needs to
my.
go easier on you.
Oh my! I don't know.
I
think the damage was done before. Yeah.
You tell her she goes in the swing, not you.
It's all the domestic dispute, and I need to find a safe word for the public so that you guys know when I need help.
Pineapple.
That's right. No, pineapple's a totally different scenario.
Okay,
but
blink twice.
thank you. Yeah, right.
Oh, I was not joking last week when you guys had that SHOT Show podcast about the Jordan Peterson safe word. That was 100% legitimate experience of that strip club. I was scared to death. She was biting and pinching stuff. Carrie's like, I've never had anyone touch my boobs as many times. She started growling at me. I'm like, I need a safe word. She's like, Jordan Peterson. Like, sweet Jesus, I like your political awareness.
Oh, that is funny as hell.
Oh, dude, it was scary
and somewhat uncomfortable.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, before we get too much further, we should address a few of the comments from way back. Holy crap!
I don't see
Curtis
them.
Gordon has, yeah, this is going back in the conversation quite a bit. Curtis Gordon says I emailed Vitavoria a couple of weeks ago. 560 is very temp sensitive. I think, in spite of what they say in all their on their website and everything. Doesn't Vitavoria claim that
They're
all
560.
their powders are very temp stable? Anyway, 560 is very temp sensitive. They told me 555 and then 565 were their more temp insensitive powder. If anybody cares, LOL.
It's interesting.
Yeah, that's I don't know what to get from that because like what the hell could be different? So different in those recipes between 560 and
Well, the
555 and
55 and the
565.
65 are a newer powder. So maybe it's just trying to
Sure.
phase out the old powder, just like
Maybe.
568.
Yeah. Well,
Which
and what I get from that is test and measure on your own instead of reading the internet.
Yeah.
Amen.
It's the only way
Maybe
you're going
they
to know for sure.
maybe they took an old powder and threw a dash of cinnamon in and called it something new. I don't know.
Well, there also seems to be some variance on your bore fill capacity and what pressure you're running at, because like guys will report
Sure.
certain powders are super temperature insensitive, but then they get swings in different calibers, right? So I think it's about your burn efficiencies as well. So like I say, until you go out and test it and
Yeah.
see what your variance is,
Yeah.
there's a lot of information that gets regurgitated with no empirical data behind it.
100%. And man, I've for a lot of years now, I've put a lot of weight on your what do you say, your fill percentage, I guess.
Yep.
Like how close to sitting at the bottom of that bullet, or maybe even above the bottom of the base of that bullet, is
Yep.
more often than not your sweet spot.
Yeah,
Tell
you
me I'm
start to see
wrong.
lower. Usually, you see lower ESs and SDs right away when you're
Sure you
above
do.
90% on your fill
Yep.
capacity. And honestly, I've run a lot of like 102, 103% compressed loads that shot fucking
Sure.
great. But I've always
Yep.
struggled with anything in that 80 to 85% or lower, just with
Yep.
big velocity spreads and inconsistent ignitions. And right, I mean, that was the conversation between the Norma and the 300 PRC, was that the Norma, to truly take
Mhm.
advantage of it, you got to be into a 250 to get a good fill capacity. Otherwise, you had so much case capacity left over with H1000 and Rotumbo that in the SOCOM trials, when they would shoot at high angle, the powder would slide forward and the primer would have a little gap there and it would get inconsistent velocities. Right. So it just,
Yep.
you go to 300 PRC with a 230, and all of a sudden, I mean, Mike ran 570, I ran Rotumbo, but we were both pushing 95 to 98% fill rates.
Well, and that's the thing about the 570. It's such a big powder. Don't even try to meter it. I was using my scale and a measuring spoon. Like it's
Yeah.
every kernel is like 0.08 of a grain. Like it's huge stuff, but you don't have to worry about your fill capacity.
Yeah. Clint Harwood regarding the
Yeah.
N570, he said it absolutely savaged my 375 Shytac.
Yep.
It'll eat
But
a
there's
barrel.
that double base again, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
notoriously hard on barrel.
Well,
Cappy
Mike picked
chimed
up
in a while. Okay.
on N570. Mike picked up a full 150 feet over what Rotumbo did in the same
that's a
gun, the same
lot.
brass, because I just handed my PRC over to him, right?
You were
So-
at 2850, and that was top end of pressure, and I was 2970 no pressure, and I could go
Yeah.
further, but it pushed me out of the node.
Yeah, and I think we
Wow.
sold that to Dominion Outdoors there. Justin Peters bought it, and I think that barrel still had what, 1,000 on it, and it was still okay.
Yeah, it was
800. Yeah,
800 to 1,000 was ballpark what we counted.
there's Cappy.
Really, that's
2,800 to
Yeah.
2,900.
back when we were talking about that 2,900 foot per
Mhm.
second range, he's talking about the 50 cal running in the 2,800 to 2,900 feet per second range. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's more to that than a lot of guys are really talking about, that 2,900 feet per second.
Who wants to stand behind a 50 pushing 750
God.
grains at 3,100? Like, Jesus.
I don't want to sit behind it at 29. Were you at that got your 6? Holy crap.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Steve and Jens are all like, as soon as these gun bands are gone, we're building 416s and Barretts. And I'm like, my 375 enabler can sit there for fucking 80 rounds I shoot it a year.
There it is, right there.
Yeah, my vagina does not like it.
Yeah.
Here's one that's going to spur some conversation, I think. What about the rebated
Yeah.
boat tail bullet designs like the Chinchagas? Now, Chinchaga
Or the
in
115 DTAC.
Alberta, yeah, he's not the first to come up with this, and if I remember correctly from articles I'd read, 120 years ago, back when I was 18, the rebated boat tail design was not necessarily a design feature. It was a way to get around what they used to call the pressure ring. So at the shank where the boat tail meets the shank, um, and well, I guess especially prevalent on flat base bullets, um, the way the dies are made, the way you press a bullet into those dies or through those dies, however the hell that works, you'd always get that bulge. It would equate to a half thou to a thou bulge right at that intersection. And so bullet manufacturers claimed it was a feature. It was a pressure ring. So your natural bullet obturation, when all that pressure hits the back of the bullet and starts down the rifling, your bullet naturally kind of obturates is the word they use. It expands with that pressure to fill the rifling. So they said this is a feature that it's just a little bit bigger at that point where it'll seal that bore better and you'll get better ballistics, better
And it
speeds
won't
out
chew
of
your
that.
barrel up.
Well, and I think
It
it
Right.
won't get
also
the
had
half go
something
wide.
to do with bonding to the core as well, right? Because you remember the old Lapua lock bases. It was about
Yeah.
weight retention on the base of the bullet. I
Sure.
think I remember, and I don't know, like Steve shot a lot of Chinchagas, like back in the
Okay.
375 Shytac day or Snipe Tac days, even the
Yep.
338s. He sent a lot, like all of his 1.5 mile hits up until the last few years ago were all Chinchagas. He had a lot of success with them.
Oh,
Their
sure.
BCs are never traditionally kind of as high, but he builds a fairly
Right.
decent bullet. But I thought I remembered seeing a Litz article, and I might be totally fucked up, so somebody better Google check me. But I thought I remember that the rebated boat tail didn't promote the same rotational stability while transitioning from supersonic to subsonic, and that's why most of the match bullets have transitioned
Oh,
to just a tapered boat tail. So I don't know. Like I say, I'm digging from the cobwebs in there, but I
yeah,
seem to
I
remember
know.
something like that. Is why you don't see it very often anymore.
Right.
But again, I have some of his 135s here. They profile is very similar to a burger, except it has the rebated boat tail. So I'm interested to shoot them and try. I mean, I've run that 25 Creedmoor out to a mile. It's they're very capable caliber, and I've run a lot of burgers and a lot of blackjacks. So I'd love to be able to shoot at Chinchaga. I have absolutely no issues in supporting local, so long as I'm not giving up a measurable amount of performance.
Have you seen us? We're not giving up a lot.
You're not offering a lot either, pal, let me tell
I
you.
know. Dude, I've got some of his 311 grain 338s, and they've got the big machined aluminum tip. They are like
Yeah.
tacks. Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Yeah. I've heard that. Sharp as hell. Yeah.
Yeah. And from a hunting bullet, like I know Bergen hunts a fair bit, but from a hunting
Mhm.
perspective, the Chinchagas are a well-proven bullet. There's a couple of guys, Pro Marstaff and Mark Fox down in the States. They do a lot of like big bore wildcatting, and they've been using
Okay.
Chinchagas for a long time on their designs.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I I don't know why I've never really reached out to him, but I should. I'd like to try some of his stuff, but
You
I
should
don't
get
know.
him
It's
on the
just easier to.
podcast.
Yeah, I should. I
He's
don't
even
know if
older
Dale
than
would
you are.
come. Yeah, yeah, by considerable margin, thank you. One guy I know.
Yeah, no, he went
And
through some health stuff there over the last couple of years.
yeah, he
So
did.
he
Yeah.
like his production was up and then it was down and then it was up and he doesn't do a good job. Like his Facebook, you go in there, you kind of see some of
Yeah,
the stuff he has to offer, but it really is a phone and engage with him kind of thing. He doesn't do
for
mass
sure.
production or anything like
He's
that.
old
I get
school.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more the hunting market. He's hand pressing stuff. And of course, a few years back, we went through a real shortage of jackets, which kicked him in the ass, right?
Mm,
So,
mm,
but yeah, he's back. Like he was at the gun show, Edmonton gun show there, that what fucking right before Christmas that
okay.
we were at. And
Right.
I bought a couple of boxes of the 135s off him. So I could give him a try. Because like I say, the 140s I didn't find performed very well. They pressured out about 100 feet earlier. Again, more
Oh,
bearing surface, less aggressive nose design on the 140.
yeah.
But the 135, the profile, everything about it tells me that it should shoot in the same sort of speed in my bullet, in my gun.
Okay. That is one thing, since you brought it up, that I have noticed about his bullets, or what I've seen of his bullets. Very long bearing surfaces. So that,
Well, he
to
does
me, that is,
grossly heavy for caliber, like 227
he
millimeters.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. Like even the 311, and I think he did a 323 in the 338s. In the 6.5s, he's doing like 160s and 170s. Like again, very, very heavy for caliber, but because of his bullets, like they don't generally seem to need crazy twist rates. Most of them tend to fall in line for some reason. But like I say, he's experimenting with that 180, 257, and he's playing with the 6 twist.
Good Lord.
Right.
Bloody stick.
Well, and again, I'm kind of one of those things, like I think, and you see it right from Berger, right? Is that there seems to be a maximum weight to bore diameter ratio that you can continue gaining BC, and as soon as you stop gaining BC, I don't think you have a lot of advantage to just lengthening out bearing surfaces.
Right.
But again, from a hunting perspective, you're talking sectional density and pass-through weight.
That's
So
different.
it's a different conversation than what we're doing. So all the respect to that space, is not generally the space we play in.
Mhm. Well, with almost everything, right? There's a point of diminishing returns.
Yep.
Whether it's hot rod parts on your car or that last 2, 3, 5/10 of a grain in your Creedmoor.
Well,
You're
and
not
if
really
you want to go
gaining
that heavy, go the next half caliber up.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's
So
not like
Cappy,
Creed. That's because you're a pussy. That was your back.
Cappy, don't be shy. Say it. Just fucking say it. What else we got here?
I did
Yukai
four.
Kazi. Hey?
I did for him. We had a 2 18, 19
How do you
hour
know?
car rides together. I know what he's thinking
How do you know he's talking about me?
because came up right when you were talking about your whiny back.
Yeah, okay, maybe.
All the fractures,
Okay. So this one here, the lowest
Just before you say
recoiling
it,
50
for
cal.
the hold on.
Okay.
For the audio listeners,
Oh, yes.
Yukai Kazi says, speaking of 50 cal, did you guys see that Thompson came out with the lowest recoil 50 cal ever? Thompson, he says.
Well,
So
but
go
again, the
ahead.
conversation is it a 50 caliber or is it a 505 Gibbs or is it a 50 BMG? Is it a
I have
50
no
caliber
reference.
is right? So I'm assuming it's just the smaller 50 caliber cartridge because weight times speed is recoil. I mean, okay, while we're gonna start shitting on something, let's start in on the 7 backcountry. We're all gonna enjoy this one. So I got into it online, of course, because I can't keep my mouth shut. But
man.
Ron Spooner must be the
Right.
biggest paid federal shill on the planet because it's just been nothing but 7 backcountry. And for those who don't know, it's
Him
essentially
and
a
Federal,
280.
just like
Yeah,
this.
it's basically a 280 in a steel casing, so you can run your gun at 80,000 psi instead of the Sammy spec 60,000 psi.
When
And
I
they're
saw it,
touting it as
immediately thought, so a 280
it's a
Ackley
hand grenade.
with
Yeah.
some juice. Yeah.
Well, and he's like, it recoils 20% less for the same speed. I'm like, well, if you're pushing the same bullet at the exact same speed with the exact same weight of rifle, it's the exact same amount of felt recoil. This is physics, and you can't argue it. Like
Mass times
it blows my
velocity
mind.
squared.
Well, and so here's something. So we can talk about this. Chase is okay with it. Your Curtis, you crushed your bolt with that XC. I crushed my bolt. Terry Gross destroyed a full fucking action, putting wet ammo into it. When
But
you
he did
start
it with
looking at
panache.
Badass style and a mallet. But when you started looking at that, Peterson brass is rated for 80,000 psi. So you started running repeat hundreds of rounds at 75,000 psi because your brass is not showing you pressure. The actions start to fail. And I don't think it's a criticism against Curtis because Jens's Defiance is set back 6,000s. So like they're all seeing that from that pressure. Now all of a sudden Federal's like, watch this, guys. We just made the brass casing a little stronger for you so you can run 80,000 psi. Your lug abutments and your bolts are all the same fucking material, and most actions are either engineered or proof to 120,000 psi, which is why Sammy operates at 60. So on a pressure-containing vessel, you got a 2-to-1 safety factor. All of a sudden, you're now running your factory ammo at 80. Well, what happens when the guy drops it in the snow and fucking runs one in there because that muley's running away from him? I'm just like, this is the
Well-
worst idea I've heard in so long, and is not even remotely equatable to the 277 Fury, which is a 2-piece case and not meant to be reloaded. In a hunting platform, and they're putting them in things like Christensen's. Somebody's gonna die.
I saw the results of a 338 AI, and somebody accidentally loaded while they were, I don't know what they were, but they were messed up. And all we can assume is they put pistol powder in their 338 AI because they load for multiple things. And that was a grenade. I don't see much difference in a steel cartridge push and pressures. And they're like, you can do 80. Well, what do us morons like to do? Well, how far can I push it? Can I push it to 90?
Oh, yeah.
Because
And what
we're out
happens
there.
And what happens when it's not showing the
Absolutely.
pressure signs that we're used to interpreting? So Steve phoned me about it. He's
That's
like,
an
"What the?"
important point, man. Yes.
Well, Steve phoned me like, "What are your thoughts on the 7 backcountry?" I said, "Fuck that thing." I'm like, "I'm not testing our liability insurance for the first 5 or 7 years that thing's on the market. Fuck that." And
So
again,
are they
you want to go
claiming
and
that are they claiming that you go right ahead and reload these things? I can't
yeah.
imagine what you're gonna what results you'll get out of trying to reload
Steel.
resize a steel case.
So
You can
it's
do it
supposed to be
for
some
sure. How
bi
much consistency?
it's supposed to be some bimetal alloy. Steve had questions about the annealing because again, what temperature are you going to anneal it the same as brass, or is it going to be different? Is it only going to be a 2 or 3
Absolutely.
times reloaded? But my real point is like you're putting it into a long action. It's still a long action, no matter what. It's still a long action
Sure.
cartridge, but it's a standard bolt face. Well, nowadays, what do you truly see in a standard bolt face anymore? There's 270, 30-06. If you get a little bit skookum, you get 280, 280 AI, and
Yeah.
the
Or
65, 284, and
25.
straight 284.
Right.
But they're kind of a dying space, right? So they're touting that you can use this cartridge in a 22-inch barrel and match 7 round mag velocities off of a 26.
There's no
Why not just
advantage to it.
why wouldn't you
Right.
just build a 7 PRC?
Yeah.
Right? Because again, it's still velocity times weight of bullet. It's not just because you use 8 more grains to get there doesn't mean you're
Because they're hoping
feeling
every
more
country
recoil.
that's
Yeah.
pushing the two, you just need a 270. Well, now you just need a 7 backcountry. I don't know.
This
I
is
don't
the
get
6-8 Western all
It's
over
the
again.
answer for a problem that doesn't exist.
100%. Nobody asked that fucking question. Shut up.
Yeah.
There's more of those what the hell came out? It's got the plastic
The polymer
That's a
tip.
body to the polymer.
277 Fury.
Okay, but there was another one. Yen sent it to me a little while ago, and I'd seen something come out about it.
Is that the company
I can't
making
remember.
military rounds like 308 style?
Oh yeah, out of the plastic case, the polymer cases. I've never seen that company.
Production of ammunition with polymer casings for
Yeah.
the Horizon's Lord rifle. So that's that 12.7, I think.
They're not reloading it,
Yeah.
Kurt.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
it's just kind of an interesting thing. And I have no idea. Like I'd have to read the article, but it's the 12.7 by 114.
Yeah.
That it's got the steel base, but the polymer
Yeah.
body or
Well,
whatever you want to say.
so basically, it's the 277 Fury idea is that it only has to
Yeah.
be fired once and it's going to be ejected
Right.
and they don't give a shit. So instead of using expensive brass and manufacturing, they have found these hardened polymers that they go to that are basically just providing you your neck tension and they don't glue themselves to the chamber. But beyond a one firing use, and they're quite a bit more expensive to manufacture at a commercial grade, like maybe at military volume production, it's actually saving
I
some
see.
money. But for the consumer market space, like we saw that it shot 5 years ago, 4, 5,
Okay.
yeah, pre-COVID.
The Fury.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
idea of these bi-component cases. So they're steel case heads where your primer has to go in, and then it's a polymer body with a shoulder and neck. It was interesting to look at, but far more military application than commercial reloader.
Yeah. One time
Yeah.
use thing, yeah.
Well, and I mean maybe
Interesting.
for the hunting space, it might be interesting. Supposedly it lowered ESs than SDs.
How the hell would it do that just from a material change in your chamber, really? Like
Yeah.
the pressure containing part of the whole fucking setup.
Well, that's why I laugh about the backcountry, right? Is, well, we use the steel case now because it's rated for higher pressure. Does anyone think the brass is actually holding the pressure or the chamber is?
Right.
Right? Your
Well,
brass
the
expands to
brass goes so
every
far, the rest of it relies on the
the
machine.
chamber. Exactly,
Right.
right? So your
Yeah.
bolt is holding your bolt face back. You should have a minimal bolt nose relief. There's just no place for the brass to expand beyond the confines of the chamber. So and again, I haven't used a lot of steel cases beyond like SKSs and bullshit, But I imagine using a steel or a bimetal steel case in a steel chamber is going to really decrease extraction reliability. Like if you can stick
Yeah.
copper or brass, you're going to be able to stick steel.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Well, and brass
Chappy.
flows. So you start to, when you've got a brass case and you push it where it shouldn't be, you'll at least be like, ooh, I have a really large ejector stamp to the point that I can scratch my back with it. Like it's the brass flows into those openings
Yeah.
in the bolt face. You're not going to get that with steel. You might get some galling, but you're just not going to see it. So I don't know. Purpose built. They have a purpose for it. I don't think it enters into our PRS NRL world. So
No. And like I
have
say, I
fun.
want to see it get proven out. Steve's always the last guy to want to jump on a caliber. Like he made fun of me so much when the Creedmoor came out. This is never going to last. It's just a 260. And I mean, it took off, and a lot of it was because of the modernized design, but it was also about the OEM support, right?
Mhm.
So who knows, in 5 years, we
100%.
could be having the conversation and I could be eating crow that the seven backcountry is the greatest thing ever, but I fucking don't think so.
I don't think so either, because like to use your 6.5 Creedmoor example, that there is nothing uh, super special, and especially nothing revolutionary about that design. It was just the factory support, like the
Well, no, it was
for it.
combining everything together. 1.5 degree chamber lead angles, modern design bullets, heavy for caliber, and making sure your throat and your
30
shoulder air
degrees
angle allowed them to
shorter,
fit in a
just a
mag.
little bit shorter than the
Yeah,
260, so
the
it would
260 was
cycle
fucking
longer
great,
bullets, yada
but it was
yada. Yep,
designed for
yep,
120s and 130s, right? And if you put a
right.
140, it just
Yep,
gets a cunt hair long. So again, it was
yep,
just modernization of what is our current supply chain, what are the
yes,
current trends. I
agreed.
mean, no different than the 25 caliber. Now you're seeing 131s and 135s, not 100s and 110s, right? It's just that natural evolution, and it was good
Yep,
because it was standardized. Because it doesn't matter if you build a 6 Creed, 6.5 Creed, 6.5 PRC, 7 PRC, or 300 PRC, those motherfuckers are going to shoot with factory ammo.
yeah, yeah,
Like if you've done a half decent job chambering them and used a half decent barrel, they're going to function. Like they're going to be excellent performing guns. And it's
yep.
because everything is designed to work together.
Hmm.
Fucking
Jonathan
Jesus.
Bergen with a nice one. He says all the plastic we're saving from paper straws is so that they can make plastic casings
Does no one
12.7
care
long.
about the turtles?
No,
Seriously.
nobody on earth cares about the damn turtles
I like
except
Mike's
for some
comment.
blue-haired lady.
Yeah. I like the Mike's comment here. It's like it's a federal launch and they can't launch shit. And that's exactly what it comes down to. I'll give you, you can say what you
Yeah.
want about Hornady or all that stuff.
Yep.
When they launch something, they launch it. Remington had the 260. Now the backcountry's federal. And it's like there's all that potential and they didn't do anything with it. The Valkyrie.
The 30 Super Carry. That is it's a prime example. That is
Yeah.
gold.
Actually, the 224 Valkyrie is a great example, right? Because again, it didn't really do anything that wasn't being done already by something that was better. Like it just
No.
wasn't enough, and they didn't launch it in full factory support. I mean, in the States, apparently it died really fast. Like we still got inquiries up here, but we're always a couple of seasons behind,
Watch the
I guess, what you
22
see
arc.
trending.
The 22 arc's gonna go.
Yeah,
Why?
the 22 arc, I think 100% will go.
Why?
Because Hornady
Uh,
knows how to push a bullet.
Yep.
I
And
see.
again,
Okay.
in America, right, you do have a lot of AR platforms. So it's a simple matter of a barrel and a bolt face swap. And now you can run a 22 arc or a 6 arc. They mag feed out of an AR platform. If ARs were more popular here, I would think that there would be huge success on it as well. Because you think about being able to take an AR or a semi-auto platform, an R18 or whatever out for shooting gophers. Where do you want to play at? Because if you look at a lot of guys, a lot of 223, but then you jump to the 22 250 and you're cooking barrels fairly quickly. That 22
Oh,
arc
yeah.
gives you a lot of performance right at a nice balance point.
Not a lot of
And again,
powder.
mag feed. Yep.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah, no, I
6 grains
think
of
it's a great
powder.
little 22. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Like from 223 to 22 arc, like I'm loading like 25 grains of Varget on a 75 grain out of a 223. Well, now you add 6 grains of powder, and you're gonna
Was
get
it that much? Okay.
only 6 out of an arc.
Yeah,
Where you
yeah.
can do a 22
Right.
250. How much are you adding? You're
Yep.
at like
Oh yeah,
15,
there's
20 grains.
35 grains or something like that. You typically using in a 22
Yeah,
250
and you're
aren't
at
you?
28 to 30 grains in an arc.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the interesting space there, right? Is where do you find a really nice functional, so a 22 that does more than a 223, but isn't cooking your barrels? Because the 22-250, the 22-250 AI, the 22 Creedmoor is almost dead nuts in between those. And I think it's another fantastic caliber that's catching on. The Coyote guys seem to like them, right? It's a 70, 80, 90 grain going fucking pretty fast. But
Well,
honestly, the 22 BR, the
BR.
22 BR is awesome. Other than
Yep.
sometimes potential feeding issues with it, depending on what your mag and your action setup is.
Oh, I suppose.
Like we had a guy do, I think he was running 69 grain, 60 grain, 62 grain, that new Hornady VMT or whatever the fuck it is.
Sure.
He was running those at like 3,400, 3,350. Like it made for a really nice varminting rifle.
Hmm.
Right?
So what's
The BR
case length versus like the 22 arc versus the BR?
It's diameter.
Yeah, well, it's a different bolt face. So the BR is a standard
That's
308
where your
bolt
feeding
face.
comes in, though, isn't it?
Yep. Well, and because
your
it is so
length.
short, it's still, depending on what throat you cut in it, it's still a little bit longer than the arc is. But the arc is constrained and set to shoot and feed the 75s out of an AR magazine. So you've got that throat kind of modified for that space. So the how mini actions in the AR platforms are really kind of the only reason you would talk about the arcs truly. I mean, we got them feeding and running really well out of our bolt guns, don't get me wrong. But
Yeah.
again, why wouldn't you just do a 6BR? 6BR and a 6 arc are very, very close together, but you're into a standardized bolt face. 22 arc, 22 BR, they're very close, right? And then you have all these places you can step up from there to go faster, right? And the 223, depending on what kind of action you have, can have some feeding issues as well. Like the Cadex R7s aren't designed to run 223 because they have an offset bolt. That's why they came out with their new Pro action, was for the 300 blackout and the 223 for some military stuff. The Curtis doesn't like ejection. Like we were working with a design revision with Chase right now on the 223s. And it's just because of he uses an oversized bolt. There's a little bit more meat around there. The ejector's timed a little bit differently. So you don't get the swing.
Yeah.
So again, if you, and we do switch barrels, it's something we build a fair bit of. So if you're building on a standard bolt face and you can do a 22 BR, a 6 GT and a 6.5 Creedmoor or a 6.5 PRC, wherever you want to spread those calibers out, it's one bolt instead of jumping down to a stupid arc bolt that you're only going to have a PPC, 22 arc, Grendel
bolt. Come on.
What's that?
The 6.5 PRC.
6.5 PRC doesn't. No, you're right on that one. Yeah, but again, it limits some of the bolts.
I just got looking at stuff here, and I know it's hard to see, but right to left, there's a 224 Valkyrie, 6 PPC, and then I got to get the base the same, and then the 6 BR on my left there. This guy here.
Yeah, and the PPC is closer to the arc.
Yeah, because it's the 220 Russian case, right? Same base.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That would be really quite cool, actually.
Well, like a 223 AI is not going to run out of a carbine very well, where it runs out of a bolt action really nicely, and you have the space to throw it in a standard Remington short, right? So, like I say, I think the 22 arc has a place, just maybe not in Canada. And I mean, unfortunately, because of supply chain, if there are no carbines in Canada, you're not going to see brass and you're not going to see factory ammo, which means you chase a caliber that just becomes a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was blown away. The arc was as readily available as it was for the 6, but that was also, we bought that before we went through the sweeping AR bans.
Mending Ballistic says, don't forget the 338 arc.
Don't start, Mike. You're not allowed to talk about it at all. Steve said you're off.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
It's competition to the 8.6 blackout. And so you start to get into the mentality, like watching the competition between those two. You've got Q pushing the 8.6 blackout, which is basically a 6.5 Creedmoor. You run it through a die, and then you trim it, and now you're pushing, out of a standard bolt face, you're pushing about a 300 to 350 grain 338 bullet at either your subsonic velocities for like blowing stuff up. Now the principle between the 8.6 and Q is they over rotate it, so you have a 1 in 3 twist, because what they say the benefits are is you get more penetration. They just did a test on it, and they're like, we're defeating level 3, like a subsonic round, level 3 plates, because you have your rotational spin. Whereas you've got Hornady pushing the 338 arc now that just came out, and they're like, A lot of people have problems getting those things to stabilize, or there's accuracy issues, which I haven't really looked into, verified. But they're like, this again can run out of an AR-15. You can run an 8.6 black out of an AR-10, but again, it's a bolt head change and a barrel change, and now you've got what does Hornady have? Can't remember their bullet size, but they're like, it's this little dinky bullet, and they're like, we can just throw that in a gun, AR-15 platform, and run it.
Well,
So
and
what is
again,
it,
much
250
more.
or something like that?
It's
I
like
think
a
we got a 225 and a 250. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, and again, it's a more interesting conversation if you can have a suppressor,
Mm-hmm.
right? So again, in the American market space, I see why
those
this
are
stuff is
big
coming out.
differences. Yeah.
But here in Canada, why would you shoot anything subsonic truly, other than it just being a dog performer? Like there's guys who build 300 blackouts. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I just like to rabbit hole
to
sometimes.
say they had.
Yeah. I just love doing it. At one point, I was on a license. I got to play a little bit. So it was fun. If you're not on a can, like if you can't get a can,
Right.
it's a lot less appealing. And that's why I've got my truck.
Yeah.
It's 223 and a 6. They're great.
We're
Well, and
working
I think
on
that's
that,
why
though.
that. I
Pardon?
think that's why that sort of stuff doesn't make sense to a lot of Canadians. Like it just, there's no real purpose to it. Bender here says 338 ARC competes with 338 Spectre, not 338 Blackout. 338
But
Blackout is
being that none of us have
AR-10, not
heard of a
AR-15.
338 Spectre, is it truly competing?
Well, and
I've
at the end of the day, you're running them subsonic. So it's a matter of, well, is it competition? Is it not? Well, they're both running
it's
it.
regional dependent.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Well, there certainly seems to be. I was going to say there certainly seems to be an appetite in Alberta, though. No, well, but I mean, even and you were talking to Steve, but like everybody knows that Steve is the president of the Genesee Range. Well, they actually had the safety minister and the justice minister. They had a big presentation. Furlong's team came out, and they actually did a technical presentation on suppressors to bring more awareness to what they are as far as like personal protective equipment. And there seems to be a conversation in the Alberta CFO's office that this is a reasonable, I guess, amendment is to allow people to hunt and shoot with suppressors. So I think there's more of a conversation opening up about it because, again, even down when we were shot, guys calling them silencers. It's like, shut up. It's a magazine, not a clip as well, while we're at this. It's one of those things where we've created this misunderstanding that they're going to be dead silent and you could sneak it into a coffee shop and whack somebody and then fucking take off without anybody knowing it, which is not the case, right? The bullets are still supersonic for the most part, but it takes a lot of the concussion away from the shooter. I mean, with the Genesee Range, they had a landowner that had filed complaints against them several times and had the range shut down for 2 years. It finally cost the membership buying that guy's quarter section and buying him out and putting a renter in there just so they could operate again. Being able to take 30% of your membership and suppress that would certainly make gun ranges more appealing in rural settings as well. Like there's a lot of reasons that we should be looking at these and supporting the idea of having suppressors. And you look at some of the most stringent gun control countries like New Zealand, Australia, the UK, South Africa, like they
all over the counter.
Strongly encourage the use of suppressors.
It's uncivilized not to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here you're just pissing up a fucking wall, honestly. Like
51st state, buddy.
Not going
I think we promised. I think we promised not to talk about that.
We're not talking about it. We're not talking about
it. I'm conflicted. Let's just say that.
Well, you need to move to Alberta.
You know what? I'm quite fine here. There's a smaller population here, less population density, certainly. Plus, we don't have fucking Edmonton and Calgary, so
you have Regina.
I'm okay here for now. I'm just gonna write a letter to Scott and Mo. We have Regina. You know what? I can tolerate that because they're within range. To be honest,
I was gonna say you guys have Moosomin.
Moosomin is the least of my worries, other than Scotty.
That's right. I was going to say, though, if we're winding up here, I do have to do a little bit of company plug. We come out of SHOT Show, and we do have a couple of new brands coming in. So if guys are looking, some of the stuff is landing already. Some of the stuff is in stock, but we will be dealers now. So Patriot Valley Arms is the big one. We're going to be carrying their blanks. We're also going to be looking after any of their warranty from previous vendors. So if you guys have any issues with PVA, reach out to us. We'll make sure it gets handled for you. But we're pretty happy to be having that product come in. Pure Precision. So Mike and I were actually fortunate enough,
Mhm.
and Jordan Wolf, like a few of us actually, they did a really good job supporting the NRL matches. So
Right.
Mike and I ended up winning second place, and we pulled a couple of action certs. So it started us off with the conversation, and phenomenal people to deal with. It's a really nice two lug 75-degree action. So bolt lift feels like a Tika.
Mm.
They do both a Summit. I think they're making a change right now to the Summit, but they're doing the Summit and the Skeleton. They do them both in steel and titanium,
I have
but
the
like
Summit
their Skeleton.
downstairs.
Yeah, you got a Summit downstairs, and you're going into the
Skeleton.
you're going into the Skeleton for your 7SS build, but like awesome, phenomenal actions at a really decent price point. Like the Summit, I think is a $1,500 action. And then American Rifle Company. We've been in talks with them for a
Oh,
little while. So I ended up going with one of their actions to do some testing on for my 7SS. Took a look at it, had a good chat with them. And so we're going to be carrying the coup de grace actions. And I've got a bunch of the Embrace rings and mounts coming in as well. So we're looking forward to
no
growing a
kidding. That's
relationship
fairly
there.
big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are kind of the
Hey,
big ones for this season.
right on. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but whatever happened with Snowy Mountain rifles? There was some
Oh,
talks there last year during
oh
SHOT.
yeah. So
You don't
it
have to
wasn't.
go there if you don't want,
No, no,
Shane.
no, no. It wasn't
Okay.
bad by any means. It was, as with any new product. I mean, we've seen it from every vendor announces something and releases it, and they're not quite ready. So we put a
Yeah.
deposit. We ordered some actions in January. By the time I hit November, we had no ETA when they were coming. So they did make some
Oh.
design changes. We did get to see the newer version of it at their booth, but they're like a bigger version of us where they were buying all their parts from Manners and Defiance and blah and building their packaged rifles and like Precision Optics up here in Canada is a dealer for their complete rifles and they're a $10,000 Gunworks
Mhm.
competitor. But their action again had to be prioritized for their own production. So they were actually really good about it. They refunded our deposit, and I just said, when you guys are into production and it's accessible, we'd be happy to have a conversation. But I'll be honest, the one feature I really liked about it is that the bolt face was removable, but it wasn't a plunger style with a pin through it. It actually keyed in like right into the length of the bolt. So it could only go in one orientation. You couldn't put it in backwards or upside down. It keyed in, and even without the retainer pin, once the fire control was in, it wouldn't come apart. Like it was, I thought, a more innovative
Oh.
floating bolt head design than anybody else had done. But
Mhm.
for machine costs, they ended up getting rid of that, went to a plunger style. So to me, it's really
Okay.
just another two lug Remington 700 clone with a floating bolt head. It's
Gotcha.
not as standout
Gotcha.
as I originally had wanted it to be. And I think there's also a little bit of a conflict that because they have a strong brand of product, it's no different than if we were, because we've been a Gunworks dealer for 8 or 9 years. But if we chamber and
Right.
build off of their actions, um, it's hard to tell if it's our gun or Gunworks' gun, right? And they've done a lot to build value in their product. I don't want to
Mhm.
I don't want people thinking that they're buying a Gunworks or a Snowy Mountains when they're buying one of ours. I want them to be aware that it's our brand, which is again why we have our own
Yeah, I
action
gotcha.
built by Curtis
I
for us now.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah. You know what? Bit of a sidebar, not too far to the side, but had an interesting conversation with Brent. Oh
Webster.
God, Webster. Thank you. At
Yeah,
Nearlandia Co-op at the airport in Vegas on our way back from SHOT, and we were talking about ignition uh, and bolt design, pin design, springs, all that kind of stuff. And of course, we got into Defiance. Jens is a huge Defiance fan, and according to Brent and some of the other guys that he shoots F class with, um, a lot of guys have had trouble with Defiance with their like just the way that design is. And I've known for a long time. Um, how springs can tend to get bunched up and get, I don't know how else to say it, but ununiform on that
yep,
pin, and it plays
yep.
in ignition consistency. So there's so many companies that have bolt action rifles or bolt actions, um, and all based off the 700 Remington kind of thing. But there's little things like that. And how the hell do you know when you're talking to a new company that's producing actions, how this thing's actually going to perform? Like you
Yeah,
were saying, you want to know whether it's the action, the barrel, or the smithing when you're putting out a custom
yeah.
rifle, right? So
So
there's a lot of little things like that you got to look at.
and you're right. So basically, what you're talking about is clearances between the interior of the bolt body and the spring,
Clearances,
allowing it to coil
timing,
unevenly. So
you
Brent's
bet.
a huge proponent for Borden, and I think
Sure.
Borden is they're like a next level. Like you pay a fair bit for them. They're certainly not cheap. But
Yep.
Jim Borden is one of the greats, right? I mean, and he does do
Mhm.
those things to even where you get your trigger and the trigger hanger is stamped Trigger Tech or Jewel or Bix because he's put in specific sear mechanisms or time that sear. So he again, that's that
No
next level
kidding.
up. But when you're
Put
looking
some
at
food in it.
Defiance and Impact and Curtis, Zermatt, Defiance, Stiller, I mean, fuck Falcor, I think
Right.
the diminished return on that fire control consistency, like, because most of those guys have Greg Tennell. He's kind of the fire control god down in the States, has either designed them, supplied them, or been integrated with them. I don't think you see a lot of variance in your
Hmm.
drop times or your ignition consistency in that space. If you want to get to that next level where you're playing with a bat or a Borden, I mean, I could say Kelbley's and Brent will not agree with that statement, but when you want to get into the bench rest world or the F class world, it's because it's such a fixed shooting position and fixed structure. It really comes down to again at your top level, guys like Brent who are at
Yeah.
that top level, not the average monkeys like me are going to
Hmm.
see potentially small gains over large aggregates, right? Like you're not going to see it in your
Right.
5 round group consistently, but when you're shooting a 15 round string at 1,000, yeah, you might see that
Yeah.
over 10 matches, you had a 10% improvement in your aggregate, right? So it's just the data collection is a little bit different and the end goal is a little bit different. Would I
Hmm.
want to take a Borden BRMXD as a precision rifle where I'm shooting in field conditions with dust and dirt and fucking grass? No, not at all.
Yeah.
Their Hunter series again is a little bit different. So I think it's about buying the product for your purpose. And I mean, I would be hard pressed to like I had a Borden. It was fucking nice. Don't get me wrong. It was a beautiful action. Did it shoot
Hmm.
smaller groups for me than our Curtis builds? No. Again, am I at Brent's level? No. And
Right.
again, it comes
Yeah.
down to the percentages of people who are going to recognize that. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, is guys like Eric Cortina
Hmm.
because they're at that very, very top end, when they go say something like the new Callus 3 to 28 is the scope, well, fuck it, everybody jumps on board and it's like Night Force didn't do anything. And
Yeah.
do you know, like these guys didn't
Right.
even exist.
Yeah.
He went to Borden and Borden was 6 months. Borden's a year and a half now to get an action out of him. Brux,
Yeah. Just
we
because of that
are,
endorsement.
yeah, we are a Brux dealer.
Yeah.
They went from being six,
Right.
7 months on a barrel to we'll get it to you when we get it to you. And again,
Yeah.
the internet has done a lot to promote and grow our sport, but when you have key figures that have achievements and they have experience, when they say something, the people who don't have those are taking that as the best information they can get available to help them be successful, whether they recognize that they need it or not. I mean, we've done Canadian barrels for a long
It's
time. We've
irrelevant.
done
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of IBIs. Team Canada's had a lot of success with them. They don't have the name that Krieger does. They don't have the name that Bartland does,
Right.
but I would comfortably put a lesser known brand like that or Patriot Valley Arms in a quality built rifle side by side to the average precision rifle shooter or even the elite precision rifle shooter, and they wouldn't be able to measure a significant difference between builds.
Hmm.
But you jump into the Cortina world, or like Brent's been a Team Canada guy forever, they may see that difference in the overall aggregate, but they're the top 2% guys, right?
Yeah.
And do
Yep.
you need to be, is everyone there? Obviously not. So I
Hmm.
personally think like we built a lot of IBIs that have been 3rd minute guns pretty consistently. And that's
Hmm.
not tuned at one distance. That's for I'm shooting anything and everything from here to 1400, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I guess my point was like lots of things to consider when you're looking at different designers, manufacturers,
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, and that's why
So
we would
and
typically do
depending
a
on your
small
game.
sample size. Yeah, well, and that's
Yeah.
why with the ARC, I mean, ARC's been around forever. They've had a few other goofy designs out that maybe we weren't huge fans of. The new coup de grace, and again, Josh Kuntz was involved in some of the design of that. He spoke very, very highly of it, and he's got a ton
Oh,
of
I didn't know
experience.
that.
But Steve got his hands on it at SHOT Show, and he was really impressed by it. I had seen it, and I kind of knew what I was looking for, and I figured we generally don't bring things in unless I'm willing to run one and test it out and see how it goes. So the very first one, it landed in Canada today, so I should be able to pick it up Monday or Tuesday. My barrel's on that order, so Steve's going to chamber up the 7SS for me. My Millen ships in 2 weeks. So we're going to get that thing slapped together, and I'm going to get some rounds on it. But we're pretty confident that this new coup de grace, it's not a new release. It's been out for almost 2 years now in the States. I mean, there has been another dealer. Yeah. But it's, again, innovative. It's not just another 2-lug Remington 700. It's a 3-lug with their toroidal lug design. It's got a floating replaceable bolt head. It even has a different sort of, you can change the bolt handle from a camming bolt handle for additional primary extraction to a non-camming handle, depending on what you want to do with it, right? So I like that they've done and incorporated some things that maybe traditionally other actions are not doing. And I think Ted has tried to do that a lot of times. Like the Mousing field, I thought was really, really unique. I mean, it didn't really, it didn't end up being really successful, no. And whether that was marketing or just sheer cost of manufacturing, I don't know. But he's got a new sales guy on board who seems to be doing a better job communicating the value side of the product and getting it into the dealer's hands. Because as much as the States can do direct sales on stuff, if you don't have dealers supporting you, it's very hard to grow your brand.
No, that's right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so like I say, we got a couple of new things coming in. Yeah, that we got the Pure Precision stocks as well. I brought one of those in to take a look at, and it's really nice. Like as far as a hunting stock, 26 ounce, it's a very nice stock. We got a couple of rifles sitting ready to go, which we normally don't. So if anybody's looking for a 7 saw, it's a 7-pound, 24-inch. We built this one on PSE composites. It's the lightest adjustable stock on the market at 1.6 pounds. And that's Falcor 7 action with an IBI barrel. This one's available. And we've got a pre-built NRL rifle ready to go. We had some parts in. Actually, it was supposed to be Mike's stock, but it didn't arrive in time, so he had to go to an APW. But we got this one
terrible upgrade.
They're both got this one. This is the KDEX Pro 3-lug. Really nice bolt lift. Nice. They cycle great. Like again, big fans of the KDEX stuff. And then it's got an MTU contour, so it's a tactical contour IBI, and set up in 6.5 Creedmoor. So this one will make power factor, and it'll make your not lightweight, but it'll make the 16-pound class pretty easily. This one should finish up scoped at about 14 pounds. So, very nice. And we're going to be at the Vegreville Gun Show at the end of the month, 22nd, 23rd weekend, I think it is. So if anybody wants to come by, we're going to stand out. We're going to be like a sore thumb in that.
I imagine you will there.
What do you mean guns are $7,000?
Back in my day, we never needed anything like that. God damn it!
Yeah, I got me a old single shot Cooey.
When is Lloyd Minster's gun show? Isn't it June or something?
Lloyd's is during SHOT Show. Every year it's in SHOT Show. So us in Insight, we're always down at SHOT, right? So we never attend. It's supposed to be a good show, but we never go to it.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know if they do another one in the summer or not.
No, I think it's only just the one per year, I think there. Jonathan Bergen says cost and times for Vegas gun show.
You're not allowed to come.
Oh, Vegreville gun show.
Oh, Vegreville
Vegas gun show. You just said veg.
Maybe
no
Carrie's
veg
still watching. Yeah, maybe Carrie's still watching. She actually booked it for me. I think if I remember, it was I'm on my phone, so I can't check, but I think it was the 22nd, 23rd, whatever that weekend. It might be the 28th, 29th, something like that. It's the end of the month. And I don't know the times. I'm terrible for planning anything, but it should be on the Vegreville Fish and Wildlife website.
Okay. There you have it. Any last words, boys? Mikey, you falling asleep?
No, I'm not falling asleep.
Getting the hook?
No, Shane's doing his thing. He's doing his business.
I know. He's always doing his thing. It's all good. All right.
No, I just again, it's been a good year. We're looking forward to a bunch of new stuff, and the support from the vendors. I mean, we've talked about tariffs and costs and things like that and stuff, but you know what? We got some really good vendors and some good relationships. I think we got a lot of positive things coming in the next 18 months. And I think people are going to be happy with what we're able to do to try to stabilize some of those prices. But again, guys, who cares if we get fucked with tariffs? There's a lot of Canadian brands that people can support. We started our company doing 100% Canadian rifles. I got no problems going back to it. So, I mean, in the end, we're still going to be able to build accurate rifles, and we're still going to be able to manage costs for people. So I wouldn't worry too much about the tariffs.
Excellent. Now, since we departed quite heavily on a tangent from what we presumed this show was going to be, PRS and NRL,
That's
maybe we
right.
should do another one soon.
You know what? Honestly, I would love to be able to do a recap as to what me and Mike's experience was getting into NRL. Like, we're super pumped. There's 2 Canadian matches this
It's
year.
not a dumb idea.
I don't think we're going to be able to make the Canadian ones because, again, we're both building 7SSs. We were trying to get into the Night Force
Right, the
ELR challenge.
American ones. We're making
And that's sold out like right now.
Dude, it was like 4 or 5 days. The first notice I got was that it sold out at 245 people, and I didn't want to register because I didn't have my Form 6 or my serial number yet. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So I honestly, but next year, like, I have a bucket list. I want to do the Night Force ELR challenge. It goes from 700 to 2200 with like standard rifles, not 375 Shytac. So we decided to go with a couple of light 7 Sherman shorts. And again, for NRL, you know what, like, shooting Cranbrook wasn't terrible with the 25 Creedmoor, but Darcy had targets out at 1,000 and 1,200. Like, he had some distance out there, and a little bit. We were lucky there wasn't a lot of wind, but I could see his terrain being very, very challenging. So it might just be an opportunity to hand the 25 Creedmoor to Carrie, and we might go shoot 7s. I don't know what it's going to be, but we decided we needed some magnums.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. Right. I'm going to poop my pants here, just so you know. I'm going to poop it.
Okay. Sounds good. We want to see video.
I don't know if you do.
All right. Thanks for having us on, Kurt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, very appreciated.
You betcha. For those that are still sticking around, please check out the show at facebook.com/BS podcast. Leave a review. Let us know how we're doing. Email us at info@bspodcast.ca. Swear at us. Don't send selfies or dick pics or anything like that. Please, not anymore. You guys.
And if you don't
Chris
want to
gets
part
way too much.
And if you don't want a part 2 of this, it's up to you to message Rooster and tell him not to have us back on. Otherwise, we're going to assume you love us.
Now. Yeah, don't assume. All right, as always, a massive thank you to all of our sponsors. Without you, we wouldn't have the show in the first place. Shane and Steve with EM Precision Rifles, and of course their sidekick, Mikey. Miles, Carey, and Cappy with call sign 66, Duncan and Rob at Bolt Action Coffee, Phil Adele at Odell Engineering, Doug and Niza with Mark Scopes Canada, Vanya and Carly with Apex Optics, Oscar with Ribstone Gunsmithing, and J.R. Cox at Sterling Arms International. And look at that nice March scope.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Again, thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
This right here has the ability with a 30 caliber clip to disperse with 30 bullets within half a second.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.
You're listening to your weekly dose of BS, ballistically speaking. The Ballistically Speaking Podcast.